Chapter 809. Wan Yinliang didn't want to talk about it any further. They only talked about romance and didn't talk about politics anymore. Song Qing-shu also knew what was going on, so he didn't continue asking. The afternoon passed quickly. When he heard that Song Qing-shu was going to attend Pu Cha's daughter's coming-of-age ceremony, Wan Yinliang smiled and said, "What a coincidence. The princess and I are going as well. Since that is the case, let's go together." Song Qing-shu actually didn't want to be with him, but he couldn't refuse Wan Yinliang's kind invitation. In the end, in order to show his affection, Wan Yinliang even asked his servants to bring out his beloved luxurious carriage for the couple. Although Gu Bai kept hinting at him to reject, Song Qing-shu knew what Wan Yinliang was thinking. It would be a waste not to take advantage of this situation. This carriage was as luxurious as a Rolls-Royce, and he must have gotten it from somewhere. Letting him bleed a little would be equivalent to enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. That's right, at the same time, it could also be considered compensation for the assassination attempt on his carriage. Before leaving, Consort Hailing suddenly pulled on Wan Yinliang's sleeve. Receiving a signal from his wife, Wan Yinliang apologized to Song Qing-shu and Gu Bai. "I am truly sorry. Something went wrong with the gift we prepared for Pu Cha's daughter. We need to prepare it again. Would you like to leave first?" Although Song Qing-shu was curious about what Dan Jing would say to Wan Yinliang, the other party had already tactfully asked him to leave. Of course, he had no reason to continue staying. After bidding farewell to Wan Yinliang, Song Qing-shu supported Gu Bai's soft arm and entered the luxurious carriage. Seeing the carriage gradually disappear into the distance, Wan Yinliang's smile gradually disappeared. He turned to his wife and asked, "Little Jing, what is it?" "It's nothing. I am just curious why you value tranquil so much." Tu Dan Jing recalled Song Qing-shu's little trick, and her expression became unnatural. The Tranquil family only exists in name now. What good would it do to win him over? Tranquil's family is indeed a little weak now, but a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. After all, the Tranquil family is one of the three great families of the Jin Kingdom and has a strong foundation, Wan Yinliang explained. Now that Tranquil's career is at a low point, I'll help him in his hour of need. It'll be twice the result with half the effort. Tu Dan Jing said worriedly, but Tranquil is on the emperor's side. Aren't you afraid that he will betray us? Thinking of the Pledge of Allegiance, Wan Yinliang's heart warmed. He smiled and said, "I naturally have a way to ensure his reliability. But what about Songbai?" The worry on Tu Danjing's face did not lessen at all. Gu Bai is the emperor's biological sister. They have always had a good relationship. Even if Tang Kuobian is willing to rely on us, Gu Bai will never betray the emperor. Once she learns something from Tang Kuobian, we'll be in trouble. Wan Yinliang pulled his wife into his arms and said, "Don't worry, I've already set up a trap. Tang Kuobian won't dare to leak any information to Gu Bai. This is a public place. Don't be like this." Tu Danjing blushed and gently pushed her husband away. She looked at him curiously and asked, "What kind of trap is it? Can you tell me? If I tell you, it won't work." "Don't worry, little Jing. When have I ever done something I'm not sure of?" Wan Yinliang's smile froze. "You're also a pawn in this trap. How can I tell you the truth?" Tu Danjing didn't know that she was also being plotted against by her husband. Hearing him say this, she didn't ask any more questions. She had a simple personality and didn't even know much about her husband's schemes. She only occasionally did her duty as a wife and reminded her husband. Because of Tu Danjing's gentle personality, Wan Yinliang especially liked her. Even though there were countless beautiful women around him, in his heart, Tu Danjing's position was incomparable. After Song Qing-shu and Wan Yinliang left the Hailing Prince's mansion, Gu Bai quietly asked her husband, "Husband, what did you and Wan Yinliang talk about the whole afternoon?" "Nothing much, just some small talk. He hinted several times that he wanted to recruit me." Song Qing-shu didn't tell her the truth. Because he was in the dark and Wan Yinliang was in the light, he was confident he could control the overall situation. But if he told Gu Bai about Wan Yinliang's dirty thoughts and she ran to the emperor to complain, then everything would be a mess. Jin Shizong would definitely pull Wan Yin Liang over and reprimand him, but there was no proof. Moreover, Wan Yin Liang hadn't actually committed a crime, so it would be difficult for Jin Shizong to do anything to Wan Yin Liang. But if this happened, Wan Yin Liang would definitely hate her. At that time, she would be in the light while he was in the dark. She would need to be on guard against his revenge, and it would be impossible for him to always be by Gobai's side. It would be impossible for him to ensure her safety. Recruit? Gobai frowned. Although the hailing prince seems like a modest gentleman on the surface, I always feel that there are too many things hidden in his eyes. You must be careful. I'll pay attention. Song Qingshu couldn't help but admire a woman's intuition. It had to be known that the current Wan Yin Liang hadn't revealed the cruel and licentious side of him that he had shown in history. In the eyes of most of his subjects, he was recognized as a modest gentleman and a good prince. Of course, Madame Tang and a few others had already experienced the other side of his mask. For Gobai to be able to see that Wan Yin Liang wasn't a good person in this situation was truly amazing. Gobai nodded. Although I don't like this person, I must admit that Wan Yin Liang is indeed a talented person. He has become a minister, and there aren't many people in the entire court that can compare to him. If my husband can obtain his help, it will definitely be beneficial to your career. Song Qingshu also felt the same way. Although history had blackened Wan Yin Liang to the point where there wasn't a single piece of skin on his body, it was just that the winner was the king and the loser was the villain. After he became emperor, it was clear that he was a very capable person. It was a pity that his character was too vile, and in the end he was deserted by all his friends and family. As he was sighing with emotion, his heart suddenly went cold. He looked up and saw that the front door of the carriage had been blown to smithereens. A cold light filled with killing intent shot towards him. Gobai was worried that her words would be heard by the guards that Wan Yin Liang had sent, so she had stuck close to Song Qingshu. Now that the cold light was coming towards her, she was the first to bear the brunt of it. The cold light was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived in front of Gobai. Her beautiful eyes were wide open, but the murderous aura was so solid that it caused her entire body to stiffen. She couldn't even move a finger. It's a pity that I won't be able to spend the rest of my life with my husband. Gobai closed her eyes, the only thought left in her mind. However, she didn't feel the pain that she had imagined. Instead, the raging waves in the carriage suddenly became as calm as still water. That solid killing intent left as quickly as it had come, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Gobai opened her eyes in astonishment. The scene in front of her stunned her. Just now, the cold light had come too quickly for her to see what it was. But now that the cold light had stopped, she could finally see its full appearance. It was a dagger suffused with cold air, and a black-clothed assassin was holding it in a stabbing position. The assassin's eyes were also indescribably shocked, because this dagger could no longer move forward, and all this was caused by two fingers, Song Qingshu's fingers. Song Qingshu held the dagger in his hand and carefully sized up the assassin in front of him. The assassin's black clothes covered all of his features. The only thing that could be seen was a pair of quick-witted eyes, a pair of very familiar eyes. "It's you again," Song Qingshu and the assassin shouted at the same time. Song Qingshu's voice was filled with surprise, while the assassin's voice was filled with anger and depression. Gobai, who was at the side, was shocked. The assassin's voice was clear and delicate. It was obviously a young girl. Song Qingshu was even more speechless. What kind of luck did he have? He had helped Wan Yin Liang block 2 assassination attempts. The first time was on the way to Xiaoxiang brothel, and now he was here again? It seemed like he shouldn't have been greedy and sat in Wan Yin Liang's carriage. Before he could enjoy it, it was ruined by the assassin. If it wasn't for the fact that he was highly skilled in martial arts, he would have been killed by the assassin. Who would he cry to in the underworld? The young girl finally reacted and subconsciously tried to pull back her dagger. However, Song Qingshu was holding in his hand, and it wouldn't budge. She couldn't help but be angry and anxious. Let go. At this time, the imperial bodyguards outside also reacted. Song Qingshu's heart trembled. This young girl was trying to assassinate Wan Yin Liang, so he didn't want to let Wan Yin Liang off easily. Since he let her go once, he might as well let her go a second time. With a shake of his hand, a gentle force was transmitted to the young girl's body. The young girl originally wanted to snatch the dagger and retreat, but when the two forces overlapped, she flew back at an even faster speed. In the blink of an eye, she was on a roof more than 10 zhang away, causing the surrounding Imperial bodyguards to pounce on empty air. The young girl didn't leave immediately. Instead, she stood on the roof and looked deeply at Song Qing-shu, as if she wanted to memorize his appearance in her heart. The two of them looked at each other for 10 seconds before the young girl turned around and left, disappearing into the crowd of houses. This assassin's eyes looked somewhat familiar. Song Qing-shu frowned. He clearly felt that he would be able to guess who it was, but he was just a step away. Perhaps too many things have happened during this period of time. He didn't have an obsessive-compulsive personality, so when he couldn't remember, he just let nature take its course. He turned his head to look at Goodbye and saw that her face was deathly pale. She was sitting there in a daze, not moving an inch. He couldn't help but feel pity for her. He reached out and hugged her. "Are you all right?" Unexpectedly, when his hand touched her shoulder, Goodbye acted as if she was scalded by boiling water. She immediately sat up straight and avoided his hug. Noticing Song Qing-shu's surprised expression, Goodbye tucked her hair behind her ear and forced a smile. "I'm fine." Song Qing-shu originally wanted to ask more questions, but the Imperial bodyguards outside had all gathered around to greet him. He had no choice but to go out and make arrangements for them. Chapter 8:10. In order to put an end to the assassination attempt midway, the two had spent quite some time escaping from the bailiffs and patrolling soldiers who had rushed over upon hearing the news. Finally, they arrived at the main residence of the Pucha family. Not long after they entered, Pucha Ahute received the news and came out to greet them. "Nephew, I heard that you encountered an assassin on your way here. Thank you for your concern, Uncle Pucha. We're not injured." Song Qing-shu replied with a smile. He had done his homework before coming here. Pucha Ahute was of the same generation as Tang Quobian's father, who had died on the battlefield, so it was only natural for him to address him as uncle. "Don't worry, nephew. I'm good friends with the garrison general. I'll ask him to send more people to investigate this matter and find the assassin. We'll give you a satisfactory explanation." Pucha Ahute patted his shoulder in consolation. And *ba, unspecified currency, less than or equal to, *p. Thank you, uncle. Song Qing-shu smiled and didn't take these polite words to heart. Since the assassin dared to assassinate a dignified prince, how could he be easily found by these soldiers? Moreover, he didn't want the assassin to be caught at all. "Please come in, the others are almost here." Pucha Ahute personally led the two in. Pucha Chiozhao's coming-of-age ceremony had actually been completed in the ancestral hall in the morning, and the evening was more like a grand banquet. Unlike the Han style of Jiangnan, the Pucha family's banquet leaned more towards the Jurchen customs. It was held on a vast lawn, with a bonfire burning in the center. The flames greedily licked at the roasted lamb, and the air was filled with a mouth-watering fragrance of meat and all sorts of joyous singing. Song Qing-shu and Tang Quobian seats were arranged in front of them. After all, Goodbye was a princess, and Tang Quobian was one of the 3 clan leaders. Even though they looked strong on the outside, but were weak on the inside, there weren't many who could surpass them on the surface. Song Qing-shu casually glanced at the people sitting in better seats than the two of them. He didn't recognize most of them, but judging from their positions and age, it wasn't hard to determine their identities. Aside from the members of Pucha's family, there was also an old man sitting at the head of the table. The only person who was qualified to sit in this position was the Grand Protector of the Imperial Court, the head of the 3 prefectures, the High Minister, the Commander-in-Chief, and the person in charge of the Imperial Court, Wanyan Zongxian. Song Qing-shu's eyes narrowed. This Wanyan Zongxian was the great King Gai Tian that Zhao Fujin had mentioned before. Thinking of how he had allowed Zhao Go's birth mother, Empress Dowager Wei, and his wife, Empress Xinjia, to serve him in the same bed, Song Qing-shu was secretly furious. Though he was not from the Song dynasty, he was a Han, and he could not help but feel the same hatred for the enemy. This old fart looks virtuous and respectable on the outside, but he's secretly a bunch of thieves and prostitutes. He's already so old, yet he's not afraid of getting a heart attack or a cerebral hemorrhage for playing around. Song Qingshu's face was filled with displeasure. He looked down and saw that the person sitting next to him was without a doubt the left prime minister, the king of Chao, and the left deputy commander-in-chief, Wanyan Zongmin. He was brothers with Wanyan Zonggan, Zong Wang, and Zong Bai, who were famous figures in the northern Song dynasty. But these powerful brothers had passed away one after another, so he was the one in charge of the founding emperor's faction. Wanyan Liang was also from the founding emperor's faction, so he had to respectfully call him uncle in front of him. But what caught Song Qingshu's attention was the princess of Chao next to him. She looked to be in her early 30s, but her watery eyes darted around. One look, and anyone could tell that she was not someone who would settle down. An old man with a young wife. It would be strange if there were no problems. Song Qingshu smiled and sighed with emotion. This princess of Chao was Pucha Allen, the sister of Pucha Aho. Compared to her, who was married to the second in command of the imperial court, Tang Quabian's sister, Mrs. Tang, she could only marry an insignificant provincial governor. Although they were both from the three big families of the Jin kingdom, Tang Qua's family was weak. The person sitting next to Zong Min should be the right prime minister, Wanyan Zongbin. Not only was his position similar to Zong Min's, but his status in the family was also similar. Zong Min was the one in charge of the founding emperor's faction, while Zong Bin was the one in charge of the founding emperor's faction. Song Qingshu couldn't help thinking of the young girl, Wanyan Zhongjie, who was supposed to be the one in charge of the founding emperor's faction. Unfortunately, her grandfather, Zong Pan, was the one in charge of the founding emperor's faction. Unfortunately, a political struggle led to the execution of her grandfather and father, so Zong Bin became the one in charge of the founding emperor's faction. Speaking of the devil, Song Qingshu was thinking of Zhongjie when he suddenly saw a beautiful head poking out from behind Zong Pan. If it wasn't Zhongjie, who could it be? Noticing Song Qingshu's gaze, the young girl fiercely glared at him, causing Song Qingshu to be puzzled. When did I offend her? Song Qingshu was too lazy to delve into the young girl's thoughts and continued to observe the people in the hall. On the other side of the hall was an acquaintance. It was Changshan Wang, whom Song Qingshu had met in Qiuxiang House. But when Song Qingshu glanced at him, his eyes were completely attracted to the woman next to him. Judging from her clothing, she should be Changshan Wang's concubine, Tao Yao. Previously, people often talked about Changshan Wang's beauty. Even the current Jin emperor conferred her the title of Lady Peach Blossom. Before, Song Qingshu didn't understand why there was such a strange title. But now that he saw her in person, he immediately understood. Her face was like a peach blossom, her eyes were filled with affection, and the corners of her lips were slightly raised, as if there was a trace of a smile hanging on her face. Her beauty is definitely on par with Gobai's. Song Qingshu secretly exclaimed in admiration. But then he remembered that Gubai was beside him. If he kept staring at other women, wouldn't he hurt her feelings? He turned to look at Gubai, but found that she wasn't paying attention to him at all. Instead, she was staring at the bonfire in the middle of the hall in a daze. The light from the fire shone on her beautiful face, making her look even more beautiful. What's wrong with her? Song Qingshu was puzzled. Brother Tangqua, I'm really sorry. Song Qingshu looked up and saw Wanyan Liang and Dan Jing walking towards him. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "It seems that Prince Tangqua's carriage is really not suitable for him." Wanyan Liang was also a little embarrassed and said, "Humph, I swear that I will catch that assassin and avenge Brother Tangqua." Song Qingshu secretly sneered. Avenge yourself? After all, you won't be able to sleep well if there's an assassin with high martial arts skills watching over you at all times. Brother Tangqua, this is the second time you've saved my life. A playful smile suddenly appeared on Wan Yinliang's face as he said, "Don't worry, I'll definitely keep my promise. Whenever you're ready, Brother Tangqua, feel free to choose." Consort Hailing was confused and asked, "What do you mean by choose?" Wan Yin Liang smiled and said, "Nothing, just that Brother Tang Kwa can choose whatever treasures in my residence." Chapter 811. Looking at her elegant face, Song Qing said with a double meaning, "Of course I won't refuse your Highness's generous gift. I'm just afraid that your Highness won't be able to bear it." Consort Hailing looked at him with slight annoyance. "Look at what the son-in-law is saying. Am I such a petty person? I'm relieved that your Highness says so." Song Qing smiled even more happily. Wan Yinliang's face darkened. He knew what Song Qing meant. Seeing his wife being fooled by him. Even though he had decided to sacrifice his wife, he still felt a little sour. "Xiao Jing, it's about time. Let's go and sit down." Wan Yinliang felt that if he stayed any longer, a patch of grassland would grow out of his head. Thus, he hurriedly pulled his wife away. Tu Danjing didn't understand, but she couldn't disrespect her husband. She smiled apologetically at Song Qing and left with Wan Yinliang. "Since you wanted to win him over, why did you leave in such a hurry?" Tu Danjing asked in confusion. "It's nothing." Wan Yinliang shook his head, but he was secretly angry. "Tang Kuobian, Tang Kuobian, how dare you flirt with the princess in front of me? For the sake of the Song Jade Wall, I'll bear with it for now. When I get my hands on the Song Jade Wall, I'll deal with you." Thinking of Gubai's peerless beauty, Wan Yinliang's heart subconsciously warmed up. After watching Wan Yinliang and his wife leave, Song Qing turned around and found that Gubai was still in a daze. He couldn't help but help her up with concern. "Are you feeling unwell?" Being touched by his hand, Gubai's body visibly trembled. However, she quickly concealed it and forced a smile. "Perhaps I was frightened by the assassin." "Right, husband." "Husband, can you tell me more about what happened in Kaifeng City? Why do you suddenly care about this?" Song Qing asked in confusion. "No, nothing." Gubai lifted her skirt and sat down. "It's just that we had some conflicts a while ago, so I didn't ask about what happened to you in Kaifeng City." "I see. Overall, it was scary but not dangerous." Many people had asked this question before. Song Qing had already made up a perfect lie and told her the gist of it. Gubai listened attentively and did not say a single word. Her tranquil face seemed to have a soft glow, attracting countless men to peep at her. Song Qing was amused and annoyed at the same time. At the same time, a strong sense of pride rose in his heart. The woman in front of him had stunned countless men, and every inch of her body belonged to him. Song Qing's explanation was relatively brief. After Gubai heard it, she suddenly asked a question. "As far as I know, your sworn brother, Song Qing, is a famous top master in Jianghu. Didn't he save you when you were in danger?" Song Qing was shocked. His speech had indeed intentionally or unintentionally neglected the role of his real body. Could it be that Gubai had realized something when she suddenly asked such a question? "When I got into trouble, he went somewhere else to take care of business. Later on, when he found out that I was captured by the beggar sect, he personally went to find Huang Rong. The two of them were friends for a while, so Huang Rong only let me go because of him. Otherwise, her husband would not have let me go so easily, even with Wan Yan Liang's help." Song Qing's mind worked like lightning, and he quickly came up with a reasonable explanation. "I see." Gubai nodded thoughtfully. "But why haven't I heard you mention this before? My sworn brother is, after all, the sworn enemy of the Qin Kingdom. Naturally, he is also the sworn enemy of the Jin Kingdom. His identity is very sensitive. I was worried that if I told him, it would cause trouble." Song Qing said without changing his expression. Gubai gave a slight nod. It was impossible to tell from her expression whether or not she agreed with this explanation. After a pause, she asked, "Yesterday, that sworn brother of yours suddenly burst into the manor. Afterwards, he disappeared without a trace. Do you know where he is now?" Looking at Gubai's clear and limpid eyes, Song Qing felt a little strange. He thought to himself, why did she suddenly put the blame on me? I'm not very sure. My sworn brother always comes and goes without a trace. Did he not contact you when he came to Daxing Manor? Gubai looked at him with a burning gaze. Maybe he wanted to find me last time and bumped into you, Song Qing answered instinctively. Really? Gubai's lips curled into a bitter smile. Then the next time he comes looking for you, call me along. Your sworn brother came to Daxing Manor. As his sister-in-law, I have to do my part as a host. Okay. Song Qing groaned inwardly. It was not easy to lie in this world. Often, a lie needed thousands of lies to make up for it. At the same time, Pu Cha Hut was comforting his precious daughter. Little grass, Yangwu will definitely come. Just wait a little longer. Oomph. The others are already here, but he's still not here at this hour. He clearly doesn't care about me. What's the point of having a fiancé like him? Pu Cha Chiao pouted her lips so high that it seemed as if an oil pot could be hung from her mouth. Hee. Pu Cha Hut suddenly revealed a strange expression. Don't you not like him? Why are you still hoping for him to come? I don't like him, that's my business. But if he doesn't come, it means that he doesn't care about me. I can't take this lying down. Pu Cha Chiao stomped her feet. She seemed extremely indignant. Seeing his daughter's angry expression, Pu Cha Hut smiled bitterly. He was really old and didn't understand the minds of these young people. Little sister, don't worry. There's no way he won't come with such a grand invitation. A burly young man sitting at the side comforted her. If worst comes to worst, I'll beat him up when he comes. How about that? If Song Qing was here, he would recognize this tall young man as one of the two experts who followed Wang Yinping from the laundry yard, Pu Cha Shiji. Pu Cha Shiji was born with great strength and was later taught by a famous teacher. He was already recognized as the #1 expert among the younger generation of the Jin Kingdom. Even when compared to the older generation experts, he was not at a disadvantage. Other than the mysterious and unpredictable minister of the imperial palace, the Xinghua, no one had the confidence to win against him. Today, Pu Cha Shiji had specially asked for leave from the laundry to come back to celebrate his sister's coming-of-age ceremony. He had doted on his sister since she was young and had beaten up many young masters in the capital for her sake. When he found out that Yanghua, who was betrothed to his sister before she was born, had lost an arm, he subconsciously felt a little unhappy. He planned to teach Yanghua a lesson and make him back off. Big brother loves little grass the most. Pu Cha Chiao skipped over and hugged her brother's arm, a smile blossoming on her face. You two, stop fooling around. Isn't Yanghua here? Pu Cha Hut pointed at the group of people coming in from afar. When Pu Cha Chiao heard this, she immediately let go of her brother's arm and ran to the window to look out. Even though she was not satisfied with this marriage and had already made up her mind to tell her father no matter what the other party looked like, he was still her fiancé in name. In addition, she had never seen him before, so it was normal for her to be curious about his appearance. Pu Cha Chiao had originally only glanced at him casually. She had never seen Yanghua before, but she recognized him at a glance. Other than the empty sleeves, the desolate aura on him was too unique. It immediately attracted her attention. When she saw Yanghua's appearance clearly, she was stunned. A delicate and handsome face with sword-like eyebrows and a pair of phoenix eyes. Pu Cha Chiao's face reddened as she looked at him and even began to feel sorry for him. This person's face was pale and haggard, and she wondered what sadness he had in his heart. Pu Cha Shiji also stood at the side and observed his brother-in-law in name, but he did not feel the same way as his sister. Instead, he felt that this person was unkempt and was not worthy of his sister. Little sister, I'll help you teach him a lesson later. I'll help you vent your anger. Okay. Pu Cha Chiao did not hear what her brother said at all. Her eyes were filled with Yanghua's figure. Song Qing was also looking at Yanghua at this moment and realized that he did not come alone. There was a middle-aged man beside him. Although Song Qing did not know him, he had gathered information that this middle-aged man was called Wanyin Zongxian. He was an official in the Ministry of Rights and was the person in charge of the king of Zhao, Wanyin Honglia's faction. Different from the Han dynasty, in the Jin Kingdom, the power was mainly in the Shangshu province and the marshal's office, while the 6 ministries were just some auxiliary yamen. The Ministry of Rights sounded impressive, but in fact, it did not have much power. This also showed how weak the king of Zhao's faction was. Yanghua was the eldest grandson of the king of Zhao, Wanyan Honglai, so it was only natural that he would be together with Wanyan Zongxian. Everyone had arrived, and the banquet officially began. After a series of tedious and boring formalities, Pucha Ahut completed his daughter's coming-of-age ceremony. Next up was the most interesting segment, where Pucha Qiuzao would perform a dance to thank all the guests who had come to congratulate her. This segment was interesting for two reasons. First, it was because a beautiful girl's dance was always pleasing to the eye, and second, she would invite a young man to dance with her after her dance. This man was not randomly chosen, but usually an unmarried man, and the person chosen was usually the girl's sweetheart. Unlike the reserved Han women, the grassland women expressed their love passionately and directly. Song Qing sighed inwardly. At the same time, he found it strange that Ge Bai would take the initiative to explain this to him, as if she knew that he did not understand. Chapter 8:12. Women from the plains are indeed different from Han women. Song Qing sighed. This Pucha Qiuzao was only 14 years old, but she didn't seem like a little lowly at all. She was tall, and her thighs were fair and round. Her breasts were quite impressive, and she looked like a beautiful girl in spring. Song Qing was extremely excited, not because of the beauty of the girl before him. After all, he had seen too many beauties. Although this Pucha Qiuzao was pretty, her looks were far from being able to move his heart. The reason he was so excited was because of the dress she was wearing. It was said that all Jurchen girls would wear this dress when they came of age, but in Song Qing's eyes, the style of this dress was not much different from the miniskirts in the cities of his previous world. What a tearful face. Song Qing had been in this world for a few years now. Although the dresses of the women in this world were also very beautiful, they were more of a classical beauty. Not to mention revealing thighs, even showing a bit of flesh was considered indecent. Thinking of the fair thighs that filled the streets in summer in his previous world, Song Qing couldn't help but sigh. I never thought that I would have the chance to see such a beautiful scenery in this life. If I have the chance to rule the world one day, I will definitely promote miniskirts throughout the country. Pucha Qiuzao's hair was tied into small bundles, and it was obvious that it had been meticulously woven. Every small braid was adorned with a few small jadeite ornaments, looking a little like the playful braids that were popular in the cities of his previous world. She looked like she was filled with the vitality of spring. Coupled with her fair thighs and the soft miniskirt that occasionally rose as she danced, it formed an absolute territory that made one's heart throb. The girl was like a fairy of the plains, dancing gracefully by the bonfire. Many of the youths present swallowed their saliva, secretly guessing who would be the lucky one to be invited to be her dance partner. The daughter of the Pucha family is indeed beautiful. Ge Bai sighed. Song Qing's heart skipped a beat, and he went over with a smile. Why don't we have a beautiful daughter too? Hearing his words, Ge Bai's face paled, but she quickly concealed it. You're so ugly. Your daughter will definitely not be pretty. Song Qing quietly hugged her slender waist and said with a smile, although I'm a little ugly, you're so beautiful. Our daughter will definitely look like you. Ge Bai's body stiffened. She twisted her waist and unobtrusively let go of his hand. She then changed the topic. Who do you think Autumn Grass will choose as her dance partner later? Song Qing thought that she was embarrassed in public and did not take it to heart. He smiled and said, Isn't it obvious? Although she was thanking everyone in the audience, she was intentionally or unintentionally hanging around Yanghua. The time she danced in front of him was more than the time she danced in front of everyone else combined. Ge Bai nodded slightly. That's right, Brother Yang's appearance is indeed very attractive to women, but it's a pity that he lost an arm. Wanyan Honglai, Emperor Taizu, and Emperor Taizong were of the first generation. Yang Kong, Wanyan Zongkong, Wanyan Zonggan, Zong Wang, Zong Bai, Zong Xian, and Zong Min were the second generation. The current emperor and Wanyan Liang were of the third generation. Yanghua, Ge Bai, and Tanquil were also of the third generation. In terms of bloodline, Yanghua was Ge Bai's distant cousin. Song Qing shook his head. That's not true. Brother Yang may have lost an arm, but he has a proud and indomitable character. In addition, he has practiced peerless martial arts. Who knows how many people in this world can't compare to him? What about you? How do you compare to him? Goodbye suddenly turned around, her eyes sparkling. Me? Song Qing's expression froze for a moment. Then he quickly laughed. First of all, my bearded face is far inferior to Brother Yang's in terms of appearance. Naturally, I can't compare to him. Goodbye shook her head. Her eyes seemed ethereal. In my heart, my husband is the most handsome man in the world. Song Qing thought to himself, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. No matter how you look at Tang Quobian, he can't be called handsome. I didn't expect Goodbye and Wan Yinping to be so deeply in love with him. Ha ha, you're making me feel embarrassed. Song Qing subconsciously reached out to hug her. Goodbye's body stiffened again. Perhaps she was infected by the joyous atmosphere, but this time she didn't avoid him. Instead, she pressed her face against his shoulder. Her expression was complicated. Back then, we promised to live together until our hair turns white. Can you still keep that promise? Of course. Song Qing was stunned. He didn't know if he was imagining things, but after the assassination attempt, Goodbye seemed to have become a little strange. In the future, when we have a child, his surname must be Tanqua. You have no objections. Goodbye said quietly. If I don't believe you, what surname can Tanqua have? Song Qing was secretly shocked. Why did she sound like she already knew that he wasn't her husband? But if she really did know, why was her reaction so calm? Remember what you promised me today. Goodbye's face suddenly brightened. I've even thought of a name. If it's a son, he'll be called Tang Quinyen. If it's a daughter, she'll be called Tang Quasi. Tang Quinyen? Tang Quasi? Song Qing's expression changed slightly. Just as he was about to say something, the atmosphere of the banquet reached its climax. Pucha Qiucao finished the last part of the dance and stopped in front of Yanghua. Her face was slightly red as she stared at him. Pucha Ahu, who had been paying attention to his daughter, couldn't help but feel comforted. Since Xiao Chao has taken a liking to Yanghua, this is the best ending. My old face has been saved, and I won't have to break off the engagement. All the youths looked at Yanghua enviously, but the host of the banquet didn't seem to notice. He shook his head coldly. I don't know how to dance. As soon as he said this, some were happy, while others were sad. Many youths' eyes lit up again. If that was the case, would Pucha Qiucao choose him? Pucha Qiucao didn't expect this answer. After a slight pause, she pursed her lips and said, I can teach you. Unfortunately, Yang still shook his head. Find someone else. He then went back to drinking. In the quiet of the night, Yanghua often asked himself why his relationship with his aunt was so bumpy. Aside from the moral shackles of the world, he believed that it was because of his frivolous words and actions in Wuji. He had unintentionally stirred up too many young girls, causing Xiao Longnu to misunderstand him multiple times, adding to the many twists and turns in their relationship. When he understood all this, he began to be strict with himself. He no longer did anything that would cause other girls to misunderstand him. Pucha Qiucao's dance partner was special, so of course he had to stay far away from her. Chapter 8:13. Pucha Qiucao stood there in a daze, as if she hadn't heard Yang's rejection. When she finally came back to her senses, her eyes instantly reddened. She wiped her eyes and ran away without looking back. Her sobs could still be heard faintly in the air. No one had expected such a turn of events, and they all stared at each other in dismay. Pucha Qiucao's expression was even more unsightly, but he was an experienced and prudent man and didn't say anything. On the other hand, Pucha Shiji couldn't take it anymore when he saw his sister being wronged. He strode over to Yanghua and said coldly, I've heard that Brother Yang is a famous expert in the Han world, but the Han have always been weak. No one can tell how much of a reputation you have. I am Pucha Shiji, and I would like to see Brother Yang's skills and see if your reputation is undeserved. Yanghua looked at him indifferently, showing no intention of accepting the challenge. It's an undeserved reputation to begin with, so how can it be undeserved? There's no need to fight. I'm not your match. Seeing Yanghua admit defeat didn't make Pucha happy at all. From his opponent's words, he could tell that Yangguo wasn't really admitting defeat, but just didn't want to fight him. We'll only know if we fight. Pucha didn't hold back and threw a punch at Yangguo. Yangguo's heart skipped a beat. Before Pucha Chiozhao's fist even reached him, the violent wind generated from it had already forced the people around him to retreat. Many of them couldn't even open their eyes. Seeing Pucha Chiozhao's bloodshot eyes, Yangguo didn't dare bet that Pucha Chiozhao wouldn't take the chance to kill him if he didn't fight back. Left with no other choice, he met the attack head-on. The fist and palm collided. Pucha Chiozhao's body shook, while Yangguo took a few steps back before he could stabilize himself. What strength! Yangguo stretched his numb wrist. Of all the people he'd met, only Jinluan Fuang's disciple, De Erba, was born with divine strength, but this person in front of him was even stronger. What top expert of the pugilistic world? Nothing more than this, Pucha Chiozhao said coldly. Although Yangguo was feeling a little lonely from the continuous setbacks, he was still a proud and unruly man. Pucha Chiozhao's provocation immediately stirred up his arrogance. Same to you. Pucha Chiozhao flew into a rage and roared again and pounced at Yangguo. Why did you guys suddenly start fighting? Today is Xiao Cao's good day. What if something happens? Gubai couldn't help but frown slightly when she saw the two of them fighting back and forth. Don't worry, Song Qing consoled. They're both experts. They know their limits. There won't be any problems. Which one of them do you think will win? Song Qing suddenly turned around and looked at Song Qing. Song Qing didn't worry and answered, Pucha Chiozhao was born with divine strength, and judging from his breathing, he must have learned a very high level of internal energy. Every time he attacks, he has the strength of a dragon and an elephant. Although Yangguo has lost an arm and looks weak, his palm strength was trained in the strong winds and tides. In terms of palm strength, he's not any weaker than Pucha Chiozhao. Add to that the fact that he's learned a lot of high-level martial arts. I'm more optimistic about Yangguo's chances in a real fight. Song Bai's face darkened as she watched Song Qing speak with assurance, and she sighed inwardly. But when Song Qing turned around, she put on a smile, as if nothing had happened. The situation seems to be pretty much what you predicted. Song Bai opened her mouth in surprise. The battle between the two was reaching its climax, but even someone like her, who didn't know any martial arts, could see some clues. Although Pucha Chiozhao's palm strength was strong, Yangguo's lightness kung fu was extremely profound. Out of 10 moves, Yangguo could dodge about 7 and easily neutralize the remaining 3. On the other hand, Pucha Chiozhao could only take each of Yangguo's counterattacks head-on. Even with his divine strength, Pucha Chiozhao was finding it hard to endure. What kind of hero are you if you only know how to dodge? If you have the ability, fight me with a single palm. Pucha Chiozhao was also feeling quite depressed from the fight. Seeing an opening, he jumped out of the ring and shouted. Yangguo didn't chase after him. Hearing Pucha Chiozhao's challenge, the young man's temperament was stimulated, and he simply replied, "All right." Pucha Shiji took a deep breath and straightened his back, the bones in his body creaking. Even before he unleashed his palm strike, his aura was already rising rapidly. The surrounding people all sucked in a breath of cold air, wondering how earth-shattering this palm strike would be. On the contrary, Yangguo simply placed his palm in front of his eyes and closed his eyes at the same time, sinking into a state of extreme tranquility. Even the chief steward of the Great Qing Kingdom wouldn't dare to take little Jie's full strength head-on. Brother Yang, you're underestimating your opponent too much. Song Bai subconsciously pinched the silk handkerchief in her hand and said with some worry. Song Qing smiled and explained, this move of Yangguo's is called the shadowed palm. The key lies in the coordination of one's state of mind. The external performance isn't that important, but the power is incomparably great. Speaking of which, I'm more worried about Pucha Chiozhao. He was also shocked. After not seeing Yangguo for a period of time, Yangguo's cultivation had actually improved so much. At this moment, the aura that was faintly emitted from his body was something ordinary people couldn't see. But how could Song Qing not see it? With Yangguo's combat strength as the center, An area of 3 feet around him seemed to have fallen into a kind of absolute silence. Even the flow of air had slowed down a lot, as if he wasn't standing in the air, but in viscous water. It's likely that after learning about his origins, his state of mind is more in line with the concept of the shadowed palm. That's why there's such a huge improvement. Song Qing secretly guessed. Shadowed palm. Song Bai silently muttered these few words, her expression suddenly becoming extremely desolate. If others were to look closely, they would feel that her current expression was extremely similar to Yanggua's. At this moment, Song Qing's attention was completely focused on the two people in the field. He heard Pucha Qiu Cao roar, and his whole body seemed to have transformed into a raging bull, charging towards Yanghua with great momentum. Yanghua also suddenly opened his eyes, and at that moment, the people nearby even had an illusion that Yanghua's eyes seemed to have exploded with great vigor. The fist and palm collided, and the energy dispersed in all directions, causing the people nearby to fall one after another, and the wine glasses and fruit plates on the table next to them all cracked. Unlike the last time, it wasn't Yanghua who retreated this time. Pucha Qiu Cao let out a loud cry, and his whole body involuntarily streaked across the air in a parabola, crashing into a distant tree. Pucha Qiu Cao, who had been watching from the side, jumped in fright, thinking that her brother had made a move for her, and if he crashed into the tree at such a fast speed, wouldn't he be seriously injured? With a thought, she rushed forward, trying to catch her brother in the air. Seeing this scene, Yanghua's expression immediately changed. With a tap of his foot, he rushed forward and caught Pucha Qiu Cao in his arms before the two came into contact, twisting his body in midair and moving a foot horizontally, dodging the oncoming Pucha Qiu Cao. Being in Yanghua's arms, surrounded by a strong masculine aura, Pucha Qiu Cao raised her head to look at the handsome face right in front of her, and her face immediately turned bright red. "What are you doing? Let me go. I want to save my brother." As if she could feel the strange gazes of the people around her, Pucha Qiu Cao felt very embarrassed, and her whole body struggled, at the same time raising a fist to punch Yanghua's chest. "Your brother is fine," Yanghua said lightly. "Ah." Pucha Qiu Cao did not understand, and followed his gaze, only to see her brother getting up from the ground as if nothing had happened. "Little sister, don't worry. I don't have a single injury on my body. This young guy's palm strength is only SOSO. Pucha Qiu Cao was the #1 expert of a younger generation of the Jin Kingdom, and he boasted of his innate divine strength. Now that he was sent flying by Yanghua's palm in a head-on collision, he could not help but feel a little embarrassed. When he heard his sister shouting that she would come to save him, his face turned even redder, and he subconsciously responded. Who knew that as soon as he finished speaking, he heard a cracking sound behind him. Pucha Qiu Cao turned his head in shock and found that the tree he had crashed into had snapped in the middle and was now slowly falling to the ground. Even people who didn't know martial arts could see that Yanghua was being lenient. He used the hitting the bull through the mountain method to move his palm towards the tree. Otherwise, if the palm had landed, even the tree, which would require several people to wrap their arms around it, would have snapped in half. How could a human's body of flesh and blood withstand it? Pucha Qiu Cao also understood that it was actually very dangerous for her to hastily rush to fetch her brother. If Yanghua had not flown over to save her, she might have died on the spot. So I was wrong about him. Pucha Qiu Cao secretly glanced at Yanghua, her heart beating faster than before. Unfortunately, he had already let go of her and silently walked back. Thinking of the warm embrace just now, Pucha Qiu Cao could not help but feel a sense of loss. If I had known, I wouldn't have struggled just now. Ha! Both of you are highly skilled in martial arts. This competition was truly marvelous, especially when Nephew Yang saved the damsel in distress at the end. It is truly a beautiful story. Wanyan Zhongxian, who was sitting at the head of the table, stood up and applauded, trying to smooth over the awkwardness between the two sides. As soon as Wanyan Zhongxian opened his mouth, the rest of the people also followed suit, quickly diluting the awkward atmosphere caused by Yang was rejection of Pucha Chiozao. Pucha Hyut also took the opportunity to speak, not mentioning the previous incident. Just like that, the storm was reduced from a big one to a small one, and many of the people present secretly let out a sigh of relief. Everyone tacitly agreed that tonight's main character, Pucha Chiozao, had already danced. Next, it was time for the rest of the people to dance. When he found out that the rest of the people still wanted to dance, Song Qing could not help but feel his scalp go numb. Unlike the Han people, the people of the prairie, regardless of gender, were all skilled in singing and dancing. But how could he know the dance of the maiden tribe? Not to mention now, even in his previous life, he did not know how to dance. Qianbei, don't come find me for a dance. Song Qing glanced at Goodbye, secretly praying. Chapter 814. Song Qing Shu smiled bitterly to himself, but he soon realized that something was wrong. Uncle Tang Kwa? He raised his head in surprise and saw a pretty girl standing in front of him, smiling at him. Who else could it be but Wanyan Zhongjie? Noticing the murderous looks in the eyes of the men around him, Song Qing Shu smiled bitterly to himself. No wonder these men were so angry. He had already married the most beautiful woman in the Jin Kingdom, and now she was taking the initiative to come to him. It would be strange if they weren't angry. But why was Zhongjie looking for him? Although there was no written rule, it was generally accepted that unmarried men would dance with unmarried men, and married men would dance with their spouses. She knew that Tang Kuobian was married, and his wife was by his side. Was it really appropriate for her to come here and invite him? Song Qing Shu really wanted to agree to her, not because it would be romantic to be with a beautiful girl, but because he was very curious about why this girl always seemed to be against him. The two of them obviously had no grudges in the past, and there was no enmity between them in the past. Could it be that Tang Kuobian bullied her before and then abandoned her? In Song Qing Shu's mind, he even thought of some third-rate romance dramas from his past life, but he quickly rejected it. After all, he was very sensitive to the inexplicable sense of familiarity with Zhongjie. The two of them must have met somewhere before, but after thinking for a long time, he still couldn't remember where. Although Song Qing Shu wanted to take the opportunity to test her, he knew his own limits. He didn't know how to dance the Jin Kingdom, and he would be exposed the moment he appeared. What's wrong? Does Uncle Tang Kwa dislike Zhongjie? The girl put her hands behind her back and moved her upper body closer to him, looking very cute and lovely. Just as Song Qing Shu was having a headache over how to reject her, Goodbye, who was standing beside him, said with a smile, "You mischievous girl, go find another boy. Your Uncle Tangqua is your aunt's. If he wants to dance with someone, it should be me." After saying that, Goodbye turned her head and smiled sweetly at Song Qing Shu. "Right, my husband?" Song Qing Shu nodded blankly, but Goodbye had already reached out and pulled him to the center of the dance floor, leaving Zhongjie standing there and stomping his feet in anger. "Zhongjie, why don't we dance together?" A young man who had been watching Zhongjie came over with a smile. "Get lost." The girl spat out coldly and turned to leave without looking at him. The young man was immediately ridiculed by his companions around him. Looking at the beautiful back view of Zhongjie as she left, the young man felt both love and hate. He quietly scolded, "Humph, pretending to be a pure young girl. With a mother like that, how could a daughter be any better? But she has a lot of godfathers, and there aren't many people in the capital who dare to bully her. Don't say that the grapes are sour because you can't eat them. Zhongjie is different from her mother. Have you ever heard of her being intimate with a man?" Another young man, who was probably Zhongjie's admirer, subconsciously put in a good word for his dream lover. "Humph, that's just because you don't know about it. Who knows if she's secretly seducing people? Didn't she just seduce the one from Tang Kuo's family?" The young man from before sneered. Song Qing Shu faintly heard the discussion of the group of youths, and he frowned slightly. He did not expect Zhongjie to have so many hardships behind her cheerful and lively appearance. He did not know what kind of person the mother these youths were talking about was. "What are you thinking about?" Goodbye's gentle voice rang out. Song Qing Shu came back to his senses and smiled slightly. "I'm thinking about how you as an elder, are jealous of the younger generation. No way, Goodbye blushed slightly. I'm doing it for what? Song Qing asked reflexively. It's nothing. Goodbye shook her head slightly and held his hand. Let's dance. Song Qing groaned inwardly. He didn't know how to dance at all. Wasn't he going to be exposed soon? In a flash, an idea came to him, and he glanced at the men and women who were singing and dancing nearby. Perhaps it was because of his dual souls that his spiritual power was much higher than that of an ordinary person. He could even learn martial arts after just one look. After watching the other enlightened ones dance for a short while, he quickly learned the basics of the dance. Although he only learned the form, but not the spirit, because he didn't explain it in detail, it was enough to deal with an emergency. Goodbye was also very surprised that Song Qing could dance so well. She had expected him to have no idea how to dance at all. How was it? Did your husband dance well? If it wasn't for the fact that he was staring at Tang Quobian's mask, Song Qing really wouldn't have dared to dance such a shameful dance. Looking at the other party's smug expression, Goodbye did not know why, but she felt as if her gloomy mood from before had been swept away. She burst into laughter and hurriedly covered her mouth with her hands. Her snow-white and delicate hands and her tender lips reflected off each other, forming an extremely beautiful picture. I don't know where you learned this from. Even though it looks similar on the surface, the rhythm is completely wrong. Follow me. I'll teach you. Goodbye held his hand, one teaching and one learning, and the two of them slowly began to dance in the corner. Smelling the light fragrance from Goodbye, Song Qing was secretly shocked. Why didn't she react when she found out that I didn't know how to dance? Did Tang Quobian not know how to dance before? After thinking for a long time, he could only think of this explanation. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. I've been so worried for so long. If I had known this would happen, I would have said it directly. With the guidance of a famous teacher like Goodbye, Song Qing dancing became better and better. Their dance moves also became more and more harmonious. After an unknown amount of time, a round of applause rang out from the side. What a loving couple. Goodbye seemed to suddenly wake up and push Song Qing away. She returned to her seat and drank a cup of wine. Her face was slightly red, but it wasn't clear whether it was because of the wine or embarrassment. Song Qing turned his head and saw Wanyan Liang standing there. He couldn't help but smile. Your Highness is too kind. Wanyan Liang's mind was still thinking about Goodbye's slender, snow-white neck when she was drinking. He even suspected that if there was no one else present, he wouldn't be able to control himself and run up to her to hug and kiss her. Moreover, when Goodbye pushed her husband away, she revealed her bashfulness. It was like a cat was scratching his heart. Song Qing voice woke him up. He took the opportunity to pull Song Qing aside and whispered, "About the matter we discussed earlier, why don't we do it tonight?" Chapter 8:15. Wan Yinliang frowned. He thought for a moment and sighed. You're right. Tonight was a bit too rushed. Although he was lustful, that didn't mean he was a fool. Whether it was Goodbye or Tu Danjing, they weren't easy to trick. If he didn't plan carefully and acted hastily, it would be easy for the two women to find out. The two women had special identities. No matter who found out the truth, the consequences would be unbearable. In the end, Wan Yinliang restrained himself and whispered, "Then let's find another time to make a good plan. We must ensure that nothing goes wrong. Let's forget about it today." That's what I was thinking. Song Qing nodded, but he sneered inwardly. This Wan Yinliang really was a pervert. In order to obtain someone else's wife, he was willing to sacrifice his own wife. Who knew what he was thinking? Now that the banquet was coming to an end, Wan Yinliang casually chatted with him for a bit before taking his leave. Goodbye took this opportunity to walk over and said with a puzzled expression, "It feels like the king of hailing values you a lot these days, but you didn't know each other before. It's probably because we went through so much together during the trip to Kaifeng." Song Qing smiled bitterly. This Wan Yinliang doesn't value me. He clearly values you. Perhaps. Goodbye nodded. Tonight's banquet is almost over. I've already spoken to Pu Cha's family. How about we leave now? That's fine. There were too many people here. Song Qing-shu was worried that he might run into an old friend of Tanquil's. It would be troublesome if he didn't recognize them. Moreover, he had another reason. Last night, he and Goodbye had been intimate. That wonderful feeling left him reminiscing. He couldn't wait to go home and enjoy the pleasures of the bedroom with her. When they left Pu Cha's house, Tanquil's carriage was already waiting at the door. After experiencing 2 assassination attempts, Song Qing-shu didn't dare to sit in Wan Yinliang's carriage again. Even if it was as luxurious as a Rolls-Royce, he wouldn't sit in it. In order to make Goodbye feel at ease, he had doubled the number of guards from his home. After the 2 of them got on the carriage, Goodbye casually sat on the side of the carriage and lifted the curtains to look at the scenery outside. Seeing that she was sitting so far away from him, Song Qing-shu didn't mind. He leaned against the wall on the other side of the car and carefully admired Goodbye's beautiful side profile. It was so soft that it looked like it had been drawn by a single stroke. The 2 of them remained in a stalemate for a while. Although Goodbye did not look at Song Qing-shu, she could still feel his gaze. His gaze was almost tangible, and wherever it landed on her, that part of her body would heat up. Goodbye's ears gradually turned red. She couldn't hold it in any longer. She turned around and glanced at Song Qing-shu. "Why are you staring at me like that? You're so beautiful." Song Qing-shu praised sincerely. "It's been so many years." Goodbye suddenly paused and then sighed. "It's been so many years. Haven't you seen enough? You're so beautiful. It's not enough even if I look at you for a lifetime," Song Qing-shu blurted out. "For a lifetime?" Goodbye muttered to herself. In the end, she still shook her head. "When I become an old and ugly grandmother in the future, I don't believe that you'll still like me like this." Song Qing-shu shook his head. "Even if you become an old woman, you'll still be the most beautiful old woman in the world." Goodbye rolled her eyes at him. "Since when does an old woman have to distinguish whether I'm beautiful or not? Of course others don't, but you're an exception." Song Qing-shu looked at her with a smile. Goodbye couldn't take it anymore. All right. In the past, Wagula didn't have so many sweet nothings like you." Unfortunately, Song Qing-shu's attention was completely focused on her outstanding beauty. For a moment, he didn't understand the meaning of her words. Just like that, the 2 of them returned to the Tanquil mansion. Holding Goodbye's hand, he helped her out of the carriage. Song Qing-shu deliberately didn't let go. Goodbye subconsciously wanted to shrink back, but Song Qing-shu didn't seem to want to let go. After a few times, Goodbye was worried that her movements would attract the attention of the servants, so she blushed and let him do as he pleased. When she was led all the way back to the bedroom, she finally lost her composure. Her beautiful face turned pale. "What were you doing?" Song Qing-shu moved closer to her ear and chuckled. "Sleeping, of course." Goodbye's expression changed. She subconsciously wanted to push him away. "But now it's still so early. It's already dark. How is it early?" Song Qing-shu grabbed her waist and pulled her into his arms. "We were woken up so early in the morning. Now we should catch up on some sleep." Before Goodbye could react, she felt the world spinning. The next moment, she was already in his arms. She finally panicked and struggled. "Don't put me down." Song Qing-shu only thought that it was because she was shy, so he didn't mind and directly kissed her cherry lips. About 10 minutes later, Goodbye struggled to push him away. Her hair was messy, and her breathing was rapid. "No, not today." "Why not?" Song Qing-shu was stunned. "Anyway, no means no." Goodbye suddenly raised her voice and shouted. Seeing the surprised look in his eyes, she came to her senses. I'm not feeling well today." "You're not feeling well? I'll find a doctor to check on you right away." Song Qing-shu hurriedly stood up. No need." Noticing that his eyes were full of concern, Goodbye was slightly dazed. I'm on my period." Song Qing-shu was stunned at first, and then came to his senses. He couldn't be so unlucky. It just happened to be her period. Wasn't she fine last night? However, there was nothing he could do about it. He wouldn't have any beastly thoughts in such a situation. "I'm not feeling well. I'll go back and rest first." Goodbye left these words. Without waiting for him to agree, she hurriedly got up and left, leaving only a faint fragrance in the air. Song Qing-shu stretched out his hand. In the end, he didn't force her to stay. He could only lie on the bed alone and stare blankly. When Goodbye returned to her room, she could no longer hold back her tears. Wagula, how could you be so cruel? We once promised to spend the rest of our lives together. During the assassination attempt in the afternoon, when Song Qing-shu had casually blocked the assassin's earth-shattering sword strike with his finger, Goodbye's heart had not been happy at all. She knew her husband too well, and her husband definitely did not have such a high level of martial arts. Previously, when her husband came home, she didn't think too much about his strange behavior because the two of them were in a Cold War. Now that she started to suspect something, all sorts of clues appeared clearly in her mind. Coupled with the strange feeling she felt when she was intimate with him last night, she finally realized that he wasn't her husband. Since that person wasn't her husband, but after so long, the real Tang Quobian still hadn't appeared. It was obvious that he was dead. Who is he? After an unknown amount of time, Goodbye finally wiped the tears on her cheeks. Her eyes began to focus again. Could he be the murderer who killed Wogala? Goodbye felt her whole body tense up when she thought about how she had made love to the person who might have killed her husband last night. No, that's not right. That person has Wogo LA's personal seal. Unless Wogo La comes out himself, no one else would know of its existence. Goodbye was confused again. What puzzled her the most was why this person looked exactly like Wogo La. After thinking for a long time, Goodbye felt her mind getting more and more confused. But there was one thing she was sure of, and that was that she couldn't let him find out that she already knew the truth. But do I have to keep tacitly agreeing to our relationship as husband and wife? Goodbye hesitated. Today, she had used the excuse of being physically inconvenient to reject him. But what about in the future? Was she going to reject him like this every time he tried to be intimate with her? As time went on, it would definitely arouse his suspicions. Quickly find out if he's the murderer who killed Wogalago. Bai stood up and opened the cabinet next to her. She took out a box from the corner and took out a dagger that gleamed with a cold light. This was her chastity guard. Ever since she married Tang Quobian, she had sealed it away. She didn't expect it to see the light again. She had already thought it through. If the other party really was Wogo LA's murderer, then she would definitely avenge her husband. As for the powerful martial arts that the other party had displayed, she didn't take it to heart. No man would be on guard against the woman beneath him when they were intimate. If the other party wasn't Wogo LA's murderer, but the person she guessed, then it would be a blessing in disguise. Just like what she had thought at the banquet earlier, she could just play dumb for the rest of her life and leave her husband to descend it. As for whether the child was her husband's, as long as the child still had the surname Tang Qua, it didn't matter. If Song Qing-shu knew what Goodbye was thinking at this moment, he would definitely look at her in a different light, because he had always thought that Goodbye was graceful and weak in his heart. He didn't expect that in the face of such a shocking change, she could weigh the pros and cons in such a short time. At this time, Song Qing-shu was no longer in the room. It turned out that he had wanted to come back and have a good time with Goodbye, but she had tactfully rejected him, which made him feel as if there was a fire burning in his heart. He tossed and turned on the bed but couldn't fall asleep, so he simply sat up, looking at the night sky outside the window. He could vaguely see the lights in the Imperial Palace. He couldn't help but have an idea. Today's Songbai couldn't win, but Empress Pei Man was still there. When the idea arose in his mind, he couldn't hold it back anymore. He changed into the clothes of Xing State and used his lightness skill to rush toward the Imperial Palace in the dark. Chapter 816. Song Qing recognized the little eunuch. He was one of the two little eunuchs that Empress Pei Man often sent to summon him. After seeing his appearance, Song Qing couldn't help but laugh. He was just thinking about Pei Man, but she had the same idea as him. However, this could only be treated as a joke. Song Qing was very clear in his heart that a woman like Empress Pei Man pursued the beauty of power. She would never indulge in the love of a man and a woman. Since she sent someone to find him, it was estimated that her plan was about to start. At this moment, Song Qing was hiding in a big tree nearby. From his point of view, the little eunuch was knocking on the door outside, and the yellow-robed woman was hiding behind the door. She raised and lowered the sword in her hand. Obviously, She wanted to kill him. Noticing that the yellow-robed woman's eyes suddenly revealed a trace of killing intent, Song Qing was startled. He hurriedly leaped to her side and pressed down on her hand. What kind of joke was this? It was easy to kill a little eunuch, but after killing him, it would attract more trouble. The yellow-robed woman was startled by this sudden turn of events. Almost out of conditioned reflex, she used the 9-in white bone claw to grab at her side. Fortunately, Song Qing had suffered a few losses from her before and had already anticipated this move. He reached out and brushed her elbow. The yellow-robed woman felt her hands go numb and her hands immediately softened. She was shocked. When did the Jin Kingdom Imperial Palace have such a master? When she was about to fight back, she heard a familiar voice. "Don't make trouble. It's me." The yellow-robed woman looked back and saw Song Qing's hateful face close to her. She couldn't help but spit. "Let me go. Why are you holding me so tightly?" "It's an accident. I'm just worried that you will make too much noise." Song Qing loosened his hands and hurriedly tried to explain himself. "Humph, do you think I don't know your virtue? If you want to take advantage of me, just say it." The yellow-clothed woman became more and more annoyed as she spoke. She remembered that when she was roaming the Jianghu, everyone treated her as an honored guest. Not even the corner of her clothes had been touched by a man. But after she met Song Qing, she was stripped of her clothes and treated by him. She didn't know how many times she had suffered in secret. Song Qing laughed bitterly. Just as he was about to say something, the young eunuch's angry voice came from outside the door. "Little Xing, I heard your voice. If you don't agree, I'll go back and report to her ladyship. You won't be able to bear the consequences if her ladyship blames you." I'm coming. What are you rushing me for?" Song Qing responded and then shrugged at the yellow-robed woman, revealing a helpless expression. "I'll go deal with him first." Seeing him quickly put on the mask of little Xinghua and turn into another person in the blink of an eye, the yellow-robed woman opened her mouth slightly and said in surprise, "Your disguise is really wonderful. Do you have a lover or someone in your heart?" Song Qing suddenly turned around and smiled at her. "No, why do you ask?" The yellow-robed woman was puzzled. Did his question connect to what she had just said? Song Qing shook his head regretfully. "That's a pity. If you have a lover, I can reluctantly disguise myself as him to relieve your pain of lovesickness." Song Qing quickly finished speaking and opened the door to run out. The yellow-robed woman was startled. Worried that she would be seen by the people outside, she subconsciously hid in the shadows. Only then did she realize that Song Qing had done this on purpose. It was so that she couldn't get even with him. Watching him walk further and further away with the little eunuch, the yellow-robed woman couldn't help but chuckle. This bastard is clearly a lord, but sometimes he's naughty like a child. "Little Xing, it's not that I want to scold you, but in the entire imperial palace, if the empress summons us, not to mention us servants, even the imperial concubines have to immediately go and pay their respects. But you, every time, her ladyship has to personally send someone to invite you. Even after she does, you still look reluctant." On the way to the Hall of Peaceful Harmony, the little eunuch began to nag endlessly. Song Qing chuckled. "Brother, I just had an upset stomach and stayed in the latrine for a while. I thought I'd go to see the Empress and couldn't possibly stink, so I want to change my clothes and wash my hands. That's why I was delayed." The little eunuch avoided his hand with a look of disgust. "You went to the latrine and still put it on me. Isn't it clean now?" Song Qing threw a small piece of gold to him. "If I offended you in any way, please forgive me, Gong Gong." Gold. The little eunuch unconsciously put it in his mouth and bit it. His expression instantly relaxed, and people have 3 urgent needs. This is something that can't be helped. Where her ladyship asks, this brother will help you smooth things over. "Many thanks, Gong Gong." Song Qing sneered inwardly. "Just now, you disliked me for going to the latrine, but now you're sending gold to your mouth. You don't use your brain to think. Gold is yellow. Feces is also yellow. If I really went to the toilet and rubbed some feces on it, wouldn't you eat it?" "That's right, Gong Gong. What does her ladyship want with me this time?" This gold couldn't be spent for nothing. He had to get something out of his mouth so he could prepare. "How can we servants guess at her ladyship's thoughts?" The little eunuch said a dignified sentence. then suddenly changed the topic. He lowered his voice and said, "Little Xing, don't blame this brother for not reminding you. In a moment, you have to serve her ladyship with 120% of your energy. I think her ladyship's mood isn't quite right today. All the eunuchs and palace maids in the palace have been driven out by her. If she comes to you at this time, I'm afraid—" The little eunuch didn't finish his sentence and gave him a, look. Song Qing secretly felt nauseated as he thought, this little eunuch's vision is too low. He only thinks that Empress Pei Man is in a bad mood, but from what he said, Pei Man has already begun to clear the place. Does she simply want to continue her former fate with me? Or is her unknown plan about to be activated? When he thought of the passion of that night, Song Qing couldn't help but feel his mouth go dry. Old rules, go in by yourself. The little eunuch led him to the entrance of Taihe Palace Hall and then turned to leave. With his previous experience, Song Qing walked in openly under the watchful eyes of the imperial bodyguards. As expected, the imperial bodyguards acted as if they were all blind, not even sparing him a glance. "You've finally come." Empress Pei Man's voice carried a trace of anger, but she quickly concealed it. "It's good that you've come. Quickly come and see the new clothes this consort has prepared for you. See if they fit." Song Qing had a strange expression on his face. Although he had always been very confident in his skills, a woman like Empress Pei Man couldn't wash away all her glory and make clothes for her man like a little married woman just because of a friendship. But when he saw what clothes the other had prepared for him, he immediately understood. My dog eyes must have been blind. Chapter 817. These are the new clothes that Nyang has prepared. Song Qing Shu grimaced. At the same time, he had to feign the fear and trepidation that a little eunuch should have. He had originally thought that after that night, the Empress would see through his identity as a fake eunuch, but after so long, she had not made a single move. Seeing him again today, her expression was the same, so he maintained his composure to deal with all changes. "What? Weren't you very daring last time? Are you scared now?" Empress Pei Man was smiling, but she was very depressed inside. Last time, if she hadn't gone too crazy with this little eunuch, causing her to lose her mind, she wouldn't have been taken advantage of by the mysterious man in the end. In this time, she had been secretly investigating who the man was that night, but she couldn't find any clues. In the end, in a fit of anger, she had executed all the suspects in her mind. Last time, it was because Nyang was too beautiful that this one couldn't control himself and forgot to be afraid. As Song Qing Shu answered, he silently observed her expression. "How could a eunuch like you not be able to control yourself?" Pei Man giggled. "Little Xing, Ben Gong finds that I like you more and more. Your flattery methods are really original, and your mouth is as sweet as honey. Everything I said just now came from the bottom of my heart. The heavens and earth can bear witness." Song Qing Shu spoke righteously. All right, you're starting to talk about literature with Ben Gong. I don't know where you learned this idiom." Empress Pei Man was not interested in continuing on this topic with him. She pointed at the dragon robe at the side, quickly put it on for Ben Gong to see. Song Qing Shu also wanted to know what she wanted to do, so he didn't refuse and quickly changed out of the eunuch's clothes. Seeing his strong chest and tall and sturdy figure, Empress Pei Man's eyes lit up. She reached out and pressed on it. "Oh, you're quite familiar with me. You must be very popular with the palace maids in the palace. Tell me, how many palace maids want to eat with you?" Having stayed in the imperial palace for a long time, Song Qingshu knew that it was a lonely palace maid and a eunuch who fell in love with each other and became a fake couple. Although it was called a fake couple, in fact, other than the intimacy between husband and wife, it was no different from a real couple. Song Qingshu did not want to cause more trouble, so he shook his head and said, "This lowly one is favored by her ladyship, so how would I dare to find other palace maids to eat?" This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. "You dog servant, you've got guts." Empress Pei Man scolded with a smile. "You've been treating Ben Gong as a food target for half a day. I don't dare." In the past, when Song Qingshu was disguised as Kangxi, he often wore dragon robes. so very quickly he changed into new clothes. A hint of surprise flashed through Empress Payman's eyes, and then she looked at him suspiciously. "You're quite familiar with wearing the dragon robe, huh?" Song Qingshu's heart trembled, but he replied without batting an eyelid. "Your ladyship, have you forgotten that I am the head steward of the Imperial Clothing Bureau? I'm quite familiar with the service in the palace." "So that's how it is?" Empress Payman had just casually asked, but her attention was quickly attracted by the valiant man in front of her. She couldn't help but click her tongue in wonder. "I didn't think that a dog servant like you would look so decent after wearing the dragon robe, compared to the real emperor." She originally wanted to say that he looked more like the emperor than the real emperor, but she quickly realized that it would be terrible if these words were leaked, so she kept her mouth shut. When Song Qingshu heard her say dog servant again and again, he couldn't help feeling angry inside. Humph! Who was it that was lying there like a bitch that night? Seeing Song Qingshu put on the dragon robe, Payman's face showed a satisfied expression. "Not bad. Not bad. The effect is better than Ben Gong had expected." "Xiao Xing, do you still remember the etiquette Ben Gong taught you before?" "I don't dare forget for a moment." Song Qingshu thought, "It's here." She had planned for so long. He finally knew what she wanted to do. "That's good." Empress Payman's face suddenly heated up. "Just do as you did last time." Last time, this little eunuch had suddenly exuded a domineering aura that was still fresh in her memory. It had to be known that as the master of the Hogong, what kind of scene had she not seen? He had just casually glanced at her, and she was so scared that she didn't dare to stand up. Now, Song Qingshu was confused. Did she want to play that fake phoenix game with me again? In a while, the Empress breathing suddenly became hurried, clearly not as calm as she appeared. "In a while, 2 people will come here. Pretend to be the current emperor." Song Qingshu felt strange. Didn't he need to change his appearance? His current appearance was the same as Jin's. "I'm afraid there's a huge difference between the emperors of the 2 countries. I wonder who the 2 people will be, so I can prepare in advance." Song Qingshu asked tentatively. Empress Payman smiled. "Don't be so nervous. It definitely won't be some minister marshal. If it was that complicated, Ben Gong wouldn't dare let you pretend. It's just 2 little palace maids that don't understand anything. They have never seen the emperor. You just have to act according to what Ben Gong usually teaches you. They won't be able to tell." 2 little palace maids? Song Qingshu felt even more strange. This Empress Payman, as the master of the Hogong, had to spend so much effort to deal with 2 little palace maids. There was definitely a problem. Other than pretending to be the emperor, is there anything else I need to do? Song Qingshu believed that the matter was not so simple. Payman did so much not just to deceive little palace maids. "Of course there is something for you to do." Noticing the worry in the other's eyes, Payman smiled and said, "Don't frown. This is actually a good thing." "Good thing?" Song Qingshu stilled. "Yes, a good thing." The smile on Empress Payman's face suddenly turned cold. "These 2 little palace maids think that they are here to serve the emperor in bed today. So when the time comes, Ben Gong doesn't care if you use your hands or tools. You must break their bodies." "Ah." Song Qingshu was struck by lightning. He had speculated many possibilities, but he had never thought that Empress Payman's order would be so nonsensical. Also, zombies break the bodies of 2 little palace maids? What the hell was going on? How is it this job isn't bad, right? Seeing Song Qingshu stunned, Empress Payman thought that he was happy. "How many men can ask for this? I didn't think that a little eunuch like you would get it." "Don't worry, Ben Gong won't treat you unfairly. These 2 little palace maids are both outstanding beauties. They are 1 in a million." Listening to Empress Payman's tone, it seems that she still thinks that I'm a eunuch. Could it be that she still hasn't reacted after that night? Song Qingshu was confused, but his attention quickly returned to the matter at hand. "Your sister, whether the little palace maids are beautiful or not, it's not the key. The key is, what does this Empress Payman want?" Chapter 818. Song Qingshu couldn't help but go crazy. After all, this task was too unbelievable. What was Empress Payman trying to do? Could it be that the harem is fighting for favor? She saw that the two little palace maids were too beautiful and was worried that the real emperor would see them and fall in love with them, causing her to fall out of favor. So she found someone to break their bodies and make them lose the qualifications to be favored. This was the first thought that appeared in Song Qingshu's mind, but he quickly rejected it. Everyone knew that Jin Shizong and Empress Pei Man didn't get along. Pei Man had already fallen out of favor. What's more, her actions were too bad. If Jin Shizong found out, she might not even be able to keep her position as empress. What are you standing there for? Could it be that you're too excited about being a man? When Empress Pei Man said the word man, her voice was filled with ridicule. I'm indeed very excited. I thought it would be a very difficult task, but I didn't think it would be this easy. Song Qingshu already had an idea. Since he didn't have enough information, he might as well not think about it. He would wait and see. Of course it's easy for a man, but for you. Empress Pei Man's gaze fell between his legs. With a light laugh, she handed an object over. If you can't do it later, use this to help you. Song Qingshu took it and looked. Wasn't this the thing that Empress Pei Man had used to solve his problem? This woman doesn't think it's dirty. Can this kind of thing be used indiscriminately? Song Qingshu secretly felt disdain, but since Pei Man didn't find out that he was a fake eunuch, he was happy to continue pretending. So he took the thing. It's about time. They should be here soon. Try to speak as little as possible to avoid revealing anything. This consort will look after you from the side. Empress Pei Man was still worried and reminded him. Song Qingshu had just nodded when a commotion came from outside. Soon, two young girls dressed in palace attire leisurely walked in. When they saw Song Qingshu sitting in the seat of honor, dressed in a dragon robe, the two girls secretly looked at each other and then knelt down. These servants greet your majesty. Long live your majesty. Greetings to the empress. Long live the empress. Raise your head and let us see. Song Qingshu was indeed very curious. Just who were these two little palace maids that Empress Pei Man would go to such lengths to deal with them? Empress Pei Man, who was sitting below, glanced at him in surprise. It wasn't that Song Qingshu had revealed any flaws. On the contrary, his acting was too good. That calm and unhurried tone of command was exactly the same as the real emperor's. No, the real one's aura was a bit lacking. Empress Pei Man was somewhat glad that she had chosen this little eunuch to carry out the plan, but at the same time, she was secretly vigilant. This little eunuch's ability to imitate was too good. If she had not known beforehand that he was a fake, she might have been deceived by him. Such a person must not be allowed to live. Hearing Song Qingshu's words, the two little palace maids answered shyly and then raised their heads. Yes. When Song Qingshu heard their delicate and tender voices, his first impression of them was greatly enhanced. When the two women raised their heads, he also clearly saw their appearance. Two snow-white faces. It wasn't known if it was because of fear or shyness, but there was a faint blush on their cheeks, adding on their curved eyebrows and small mouths. They were truly bright and beautiful. The two women were about 14 or 15 years old. Their faces were somewhat similar. If there was no accident, they should be a pair of sisters. The two sisters were both beauties. They timidly leaned against each other, adding to each other's beauty. The more one looked at them, the more beautiful they became. However, what surprised Song Qingshu even more was that he had seen these two young girls before. They had been taken to Jiaotai Hall by the yellow-clothed woman. The two of them had hidden on the beam and seen the two beautiful little palace maids beside Empress Pei Man. Later on, the Prince of Wei had even coveted them. Aren't they people from Pei Man's palace? Song Qingshu's heart trembled. Could it be that Pei Man had deliberately sent them to test me to see if I had the ability to carry out her final plan? Song Qingshu suddenly understood. After all this time, today was only a preliminary competition. Only by passing would one be qualified to accept the real task. What are your names? Song Qingshu thought that since this was the case, then this great master would accompany them in putting on a good show. This servant is Zhao, this servant is Zhao Yuan, which Yuan? Song Qingshu thought in his heart. In ancient times, there was Chun Yuan, and in later generations, there was Gao Yuan. By chance, he had seen both of them. They were all peerless beauties. This little girl was called Yuan Yuan. Just from a name alone, she had a few more colors. Replying to your majesty, this servant's name is taken from songs of Chu. My heart is filled with sorrow, and I don't know what it is. The little palace maid replied. Hearing this, Song Qing Shu felt a headache. It was as if he was listening to a heavenly book. The only thing he could be sure of was that this yuan was not the yuan of Gao Yuan Yuan. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. What does this sentence mean? Song Qing Shu casually asked. In any case, he was pretending to be Jin Shizong, the emperor of Jurchen. In addition, he had never been known for his literary talent. Presumably, they were not much different from each other. They definitely wouldn't understand such genteel words, so he didn't worry about exposing himself. The little palace maid's small mouth opened slightly. Just as she was about to answer, the little palace maid called Zhao, who were next to her, quietly tugged at the hem of her dress. Zhao Yuan Yuan suddenly came to her senses, and her expression couldn't help but change. Although the two's movements were secretive, Song Qing Shu saw it clearly. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "Why aren't you speaking? This servant doesn't dare to speak." Zhao Yuan Yuan's pretty face became pale. Obviously, she was somewhat annoyed that she had said too much. "Speak, we will forgive you." Song Qing Shu picked up the tea on the table and leisurely took a sip. Empress Pei Man, who was next to him, was even more surprised. His gestures were completely royal. Just now, when the two sides asked and answered, she actually couldn't get a word in edgewise. Was this person really just a little eunuch? The little palace maid called Zhao Yuanyu bit her lips and finally answered in a low voice. This sentence means lingering in the heart, reluctant to part, and infinite sorrow, vague and indistinct, not knowing where to stay. Before Song Qing Shu could react, Empress Pei Man was the first to explode in anger. What a good name. What a good name. What a good name for not knowing where to go. Your mother gave you this name because she missed her homeland and was disrespectful to our great Jin. Humph. Could it be that you've forgotten the lesson of that Empress Li? Please forgive us, Your Highness, please forgive us. The two little palace maids' beautiful faces turned pale. They hurriedly kowtowed and begged for forgiveness. Hearing this, Song Qing Shu was speechless. He cursed in his heart. Mother ***, you ancient people always speak in a roundabout way and like to quote classics. If I didn't happen to know this story, wouldn't I be confused? When the Southern Tang dynasty was destroyed by the Northern Song dynasty, the last Emperor Li Yu and Empress Zhou surrendered to the Northern Song dynasty together. Because Zhao Guangyi, the lecher, had summoned Empress Zhou to the palace to have fun, Li Yu had no choice but to be cuckolded. His depression could not be vented, so he finally wrote the peerless famous poem, "Ask the emperor how much worry can he have, just like a river flowing eastward in spring." But because of this poem, Zhao Guangyi thought that he missed his homeland and was restless, so he immediately gave him the traction poison. And the names of the two little girls in front of him clearly revealed their longing for their homeland and their fear of the current situation. It was very similar to Empress Li in the past. Zhao Huan Zhao Yuanyuan, both of them have a surname Zhao. Song Qing Shu's expression changed. He had thought it was a little strange before. The naming style of these two little palace maids and the cultured manners they displayed were definitely not something common palace maids would have. It was only when Pei Man suddenly lost her temper and even used Li Hoju's misfortune to threaten them that he finally reacted. These two little girls had such outstanding appearances and extraordinary manners of speech. They were probably the princesses of the Song dynasty in the laundry yard. It was no wonder that when the yellow-robed girl saw them being molested by the Prince of Wei, she had recklessly rushed out. If the Northern Song dynasty still existed, they should still be high and mighty princesses, right? Looking at the two little palace maids kneeling on the ground trembling, Song Qing Shu was filled with emotion. He could not help but marvel at the magic of fate. Zhao Guangyi humiliated Empress Li in that way. How could he expect that 100 years later, his descendants would also suffer the same fate? Seeing that Empress Pei Man was still reprimanding the two girls, Song Qingshu coughed and said, all right, all right. We have already said that they are innocent. Thank you, your majesty, for your mercy. The two little palace maids hurriedly kowtowed in thanks as if they had been pardoned. Pei-man looked at Song Qingshu as if she had seen a ghost. His tone just now was exactly the same as Shizong's back then. This dog servant is addicted to pretending to be the emperor. I'll let you be happy for now. Once this emperor's plan is completed, I'll slowly take care of you. Since His Majesty has spoken, this empress will not pursue this matter any further. As long as the two of you serve His Majesty well, who knows, one day, when His Majesty is happy, he might issue an edict to pardon your sisters. They won't have to suffer the hardships of prostitution. Empress Pei-man looked at the two little palace maids as she spoke. Song Qingshu frowned slightly. From Empress Pei-man's tone, it seemed that she was using the older sisters in the laundry yard to threaten these two little maids so that they would willingly serve the emperor. Seeing the two little maids' willing expressions and the determination to sacrifice themselves in their eyes, Song Qingshu couldn't help but smile bitterly. They were truly naive. Even after being sold, they were still counting the money for someone else. They didn't even realize that the person they saw tonight wasn't the emperor at all. Empress Pei-man was also very satisfied with the two girls' reactions. Her gaze fell on their clothes, and she said, "Someone should have helped you bathe just now, right?" The two little maids' faces turned slightly red as they replied in unison, "We've already bathed, that's good. Now take off your outer robes." Empress Pei-man's words almost made Song Qingshu spit out the tea in his mouth. Song Qingshu had been focused on guessing Empress Pei-man's plan. It was only now that he noticed that the two little palace maids weren't wearing normal palace-maid clothes. Instead, they were wearing, how should he put it, they were wearing hot spring kimonos from his previous life. Chapter 819. The two women's skin was as smooth as satin. Their robes slid to the ground without any obstruction, revealing their dazzling white bodies. Song Qingshu's eyebrows jumped. The women of the imperial palace, taking off their clothes at the slightest disagreement. Should I close my eyes or not? Your bodies have taken good care of. Empress Pei-man nodded with satisfaction. These years, the laundry yard steward has never had you do any rough work. Do you know why? Newbie does not know. The two little princesses answered shyly. They exchanged glances and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. These years, their older sisters had suffered a lot, but the two of them still received good food and drinks. Even though it could not compare to the treatment of a real princess, it was not much different from the treatment of a normal family's young miss. The reason why you have not been made to do rough work is because we are worried that calluses will form on your hands and your skin will become rough from the erosion of wind and frost. Pei-man suddenly sneered. And all this is not because of your previous status as princesses, but because you are the youngest in the laundry yard. When the Jin army conquered Bianliang, you two were still in swaddling clothes, so you were able to preserve your chastity. Once you grow older and become more and more beautiful, the palace will decide to let you fill His Majesty's harem. So all of this is a gift from His Majesty. From now on, you must serve His Majesty well, understand? Song Qingshu glanced at Pei-man and thought to himself that this woman's acting skills were pretty good. She acted as if she was a concubine for her husband. Not to mention these two naive little girls, even someone as experienced as Zhao Fujin would be deceived by her. Newbie understands. The two young girls knew that from the beginning, they were destined to be the favored concubines of the Jin Emperor. They couldn't help but pale. Even though they were young when Bianliang was conquered, they often heard their older sisters talk about the past in the laundry yard and knew that they were also of noble birth. But now, the cold reality forced them to accept their fate. Don't kneel. Come and serve the emperor with wine. Pei-man secretly gave Song Qingshu a look, telling him to act according to plan. Song Qingshu was speechless. The current situation was unimaginable. Was it better for him to be a maid or a beast? But he was more concerned about Pei-man. The queen did not seem to want to leave. Did she want to watch the whole process? Yes. The two little princesses got up when they heard that. It was obvious that they were not used to being naked. Their two slightly immature faces were covered with a blush. They shyly came to Song Qing-shu and knelt down next to him. One of them poured wine, and the other raised the wine glass to Song Qing-shu. "Your Majesty, please drink." The young girl's voice was soft and gentle, making Song Qing-shu's heart go numb. He thought that if the yellow-robed woman saw the current situation, she would probably take a sword and chop him to death. But this time, I'm really wronged. I didn't want this to happen. Song Qing-shu took the wine glass. It was as if he could smell the faint fragrance of virgins coming from beside him. His heart couldn't help but sway, but he was not a rookie. He quickly gathered his thoughts. Although this lord is greedy and lustful, I also cherish and love flowers. I didn't know these two girls before. If I push the boat with the current like this, what difference is there between me and a beast? What's more, they're the yellow-robed woman's younger sisters. Although I don't get along with that woman, but Song Qing-shu secretly despised himself. He was clearly not willing to only obtain the other's body. He wanted to obtain both body and mind, so he decided to cast a long line to catch a big fish. Why did he have to say it in such a dignified manner? Cough, cough. Song Qing-shu pretended to cough twice and then wave his hand at Empress Pei Man. "Empress, you can withdraw first. It's enough for the two of them to serve here." Empress Pei Man was so angry that smoke almost came out of her 7 orifices. Did this dog servant really think this was his home? He didn't even look at where this was. This was her own sleeping palace, Taiha Palace. Where could she withdraw to? But anger was anger. When she thought of her own plan, she could only suppress her anger. "Then this concubine will not disturb your majesty. This concubine will wait in the side hall. If your majesty needs anything, please summon this concubine at any time." I know. Song Qing-shu impatiently waved his hand. Seeing this, Empress Pei Man cursed in her heart. "This dog's servant. After tonight, this concubine will let you know what it means to be unable to live and unable to die." Seeing the unwillingness in Empress Pei Man's eyes as she left, Song Qing-shu chuckled. In fact, there was no need to be polite to her now. As long as he knew her final plan, it would be time for both sides to lay their cards on the table. Sensing Empress Pei Man's aura, Song Qing-shu could not help but frown when he sensed that Empress Pei Man had not gone far, but was hiding outside the wall and eavesdropping. He was about to order her to leave, but he immediately realized that this matter was of great importance to Pei Man. She would definitely be paying attention to the development of the matter at all times. If he forced her to leave, it would be counterproductive. The key point was that he didn't know what Pei Man's goal was. If she said that she was just worried that these two beauties would compete with her for favor in the future, he definitely wouldn't believe it. But if it wasn't for the sake of competing for favor, then why did she want to ruin the bodies of these two girls? He didn't know Pei Man's final plan, so he didn't want to force the other side to turn hostile so quickly. He pretended not to know that she was outside the wall and casually lifted the chin of one of the maids. With a faint smile, he asked, "Are you or Yuan?" The young girl's heart jumped when she saw the look in his eyes. She quickly replied, "I am Yuan. That's a good name. Let's drink." After saying this, Song Qing-shu picked up a wine cup and poured it into her mouth. Cough, cough. The young girl didn't react for a moment and choked. The sparkling wine stain slid down the corner of her mouth to her smooth neck. Under the light, it looked particularly crystal clear. Song Qing-shu didn't know whether it was the light in the room that illuminated her skin or her skin that illuminated the room. Seeing her choking, Song Qing laughed and pulled Zhao, Huer, closer. Huer, this name is also very good. I also want a drink. Seeing everything through the window, Empress Pei Man's expression could be said to be very interesting. This unrestrained appearance was not like that of a little eunuch who was usually submissive. It was clearly the appearance of an absurd emperor. Could it be that he knew that he couldn't escape death, so he simply did as he pleased? Empress Pei Man thought about it, and could only come up with this explanation. Then she felt relieved. Well, this dog slave helped me to complete the task. What's wrong with letting him enjoy it before he dies? Song Qing-shu guessed that Empress Pei Man had already been deceived by him. Therefore, with one in each hand, he embraced the two little princesses of the Song dynasty and walked toward the phoenix couch. As he walked, he laughed presumptuously and said, "Little beauties, Jeanne will love you two very well later." Chapter 820. Hearing that Song Qing-shu deliberately emphasized the word love, Empress Pei-man curled her lips disdainfully. He's just a eunuch. What a boastful boast. Even if you want to love them, you can't, right? If he uses the thing I gave him, he might be able to. Thinking of the size of that thing, a strange smile appeared on Empress Pei-man's face. When the time comes, these two inexperienced girls will only be left with pain. Of course, Empress Pei-man wasn't worried about the two girls inside. She just wanted them to be in more pain. That way, they would scream louder, and she would be able to go in and arrange everything in time so that she wouldn't have to starve outside. Song Qing-shu held the two girls to the phoenix couch and put down all the curtains around them. The frivolous smile on his face disappeared instantly and was replaced by a solemn expression. The two girls' hearts were originally beating wildly, feeling shy and embarrassed. Suddenly seeing him change his temperament, they couldn't help but stare blankly. Long story short, I'll ask you two questions first. Answer me quietly. Song Qing-shu lowered his voice. Yes, Your Majesty. The two girls thought that he was the emperor of the Jin kingdom and thought that they had made him unhappy, so they answered in fear. Song Qing-shu instantly noticed their thoughts, but he didn't expose them. This was beneficial to his question. Do you know a woman named Zhao Fujin? The two girls hesitated for a moment and answered subconsciously. She is our fifth sister. Did she offend Your Majesty in any way? For the sake of us, Your Majesty, please don't make things difficult for her. Seeing their nervous faces, Song Qing-shu couldn't help laughing. He didn't explain and continued to ask, "What's the name of her 19th sister?" 19th sister? The two girls looked at each other, and there was a blank look in their eyes. After a while, Zhao Huaner said, "I seem to have heard fifth sister mention that 19th sister was rescued by a mysterious person when she was being escorted. Her name? At that time, sister mentioned it, but it's been too long, I can't remember." You can't remember? Song Qing-shu furrowed his brows. He couldn't help but be worried. Although the yellow-robed woman's reaction last time had made everything clear, he was now in the imperial palace with danger at every step. He couldn't make the slightest mistake. If these two girls were fake goods that Empress Pei-man had found, then it would be terrible. That was why he needed to confirm their identities. I remember now. Zhao Yuanyuan suddenly cheered up. I was there too. 19th sister's name seems to be you. You what? Ing Luo. With this reminder, Zhao Huaner finally remembered. After confirming the identity of the two women, Song Qing-shu secretly breathed a sigh of relief and quickly said to them, "Listen, I'm a friend of your fifth sister and 19th sister. This time, I'm here to save you and your sister." Friend? The two girls were shocked. Aren't you the emperor? It was no wonder that their brains couldn't react. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't understand how the emperor of the Jin kingdom could be a friend of their fifth sister and 19th sister. Why would he save them? Of course, I'm not the emperor. It's a long story. In general, the empress wanted to find someone to destroy your chastity, and I found a way to gain her trust. She sent me to carry out this task. Song Qing-shu quickly said. Ah. The two girls blinked and finally understood. They subconsciously opened their mouths and were about to scream. Song Qing-shu reacted quickly and immediately covered their mouths. The screams that were about to ring through the night sky turned into whimpers. He secretly cursed in his heart. Fortunately, there are such scenes in the TV series. Otherwise, I would have been killed by you two girls. You are princesses of a kingdom, not village women. Can't you tell whether you should scream or not at this time? Song Qing-shu's tone was extremely impolite. If you understand, then blink your eyes and I will let go of your hands. But let me warn you first. If you still scream, I will not recognize you. Seeing the eyes of the two girls blinking like the stars in the sky, with pitiful expressions on their faces, Song Qing-shu's anger immediately dissipated. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Humans are really visual creatures. When they encounter good-looking things, they are much more tolerant. After letting go of their mouths, the two girls didn't scream, but they subconsciously grabbed the brocade quilt beside them and hurriedly covered their exposed bodies. Song Qingshu sneered. I didn't see you like this when facing the Emperor of the Jin Kingdom. Now that you know I'm your friend, you become reserved? Although he sympathized with these women who had lost their country and their families, there must be something hateful about these pitiful people. Back then, thousands of these concubines and princesses were captured. But in the face of the Jin's humiliation, only a few of them had the courage to end their lives. The rest were willing to be humiliated by the Jin soldiers in order to drag out an ignoble existence. Thinking of the stone tablet of Jin Kong's chastity in the palace, Song Qingshu became angrier. He directly reached out and pulled down the quilt in front of them. Why do you still want to cover up now? Anyway, you've seen it all. The Emperor of the Jin Kingdom can see it, but the Han people can't see it. The eyes of the two girls suddenly turned red. Hero, you misunderstood. The reason why we were willing to serve the Emperor of the Jin Kingdom was that we wanted to please him and pardon our sisters. They are about to be sent to the brothel outside to receive guests, so Song Qingshu looked embarrassed. He also knew that the princess of the Song dynasty was sent to the brothel. That was how Zhao Fujin was sent before. Forget it. If you want to cover up, just cover up. But don't wear clothes for the time being. Empress Pei Man will come to check later. Song Qingshu threw the quilt on the bed on the two girls. The two girls tightened their bodies in the quilt and asked with red faces, May I ask, what is the relationship between you and Sister Yashuang? Why did you take such a big risk to save us? Although they were naive and pure, they were not stupid. Zhao Fujin, the fifth sister, had been in the laundry yard all these years. How could she have had the chance to make any friends? The only possibility left was the 19th sister who had been saved by the mysterious man. Although Song Qingshu said that he was here to save them, everything was too unbelievable. Over the years, they had learned not to trust anyone so easily. Therefore, it was necessary to test him. Unfortunately, they had not experienced any real hardships. What they were thinking was written all over their faces. Seeing the doubt in their hearts, Song Qingshu opened his mouth and replied, I am your 19th brother-in-law. Ingluo pestered me every day to come and save you. I was so annoyed that I could only agree. The reason why he did this was to establish a relationship of trust with the two girls as soon as possible. Empress Pei Man had been listening outside the hall. It was obvious that they did not have much time left. 19th brother-in-law? The two girls looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. However, they quickly thought of something and couldn't help but blush. Since you are a brother-in-law, you shouldn't have looked at us just now. My two ladies, your concerns are very problematic. Is this the time to discuss these things? Song Qingshu was about to go crazy. What does it matter if I looked at you? It's not like you will lose a piece of flesh. Besides, compared to being looked at by brother-in-law, it's better to keep the goodies within the family. Do you want to be looked at by the Emperor of the Jin Kingdom? Of course not. The two girls replied in unison. However, they quickly realized that it seemed that they were willing to be looked at by Song Qingshu. For a moment, they didn't know how to explain, and their faces turned red. Forget it. Let's not talk about these useless things. Song Qingshu quickly said, Since Empress Pei Man sent me to harm your bodies, she will definitely come in later to check, so we have to deal with her. The two girls looked at each other. Zhao Huana mumbled, Brother-in-law, why do I feel that you are thinking of ways to take advantage of us? Song Qingshu sneered. Humph, if I wanted to take advantage of you, do I need to go through so much trouble? If I didn't do anything just now, you would have taken the initiative to throw yourself into my arms. I'm sorry, brother-in-law. We misunderstood you. Zhao Yuanyuan said apologetically. Anyway, we decided to sacrifice ourselves to save our other sisters. Rather than giving ourselves to the Emperor of the Jin Kingdom, it's better to give ourselves to you. You come on. Looking at her stretching her neck, as if she was ready to be plucked, Song Qingshu almost had a nosebleed. He couldn't help but say gloomily, Can you stop thinking so much? I just want to hide it from Empress Pei Man. When did I ever take advantage of you? Zhao Yuanyuan's cheeks turned red, and she immediately shrank her head under the quilt. Zhao Huan, who was next to him, tried to hold back her laughter. She pursed her lips and asked, "Brother-in-law, what should we do?" In fact, it's very simple. Song Qing cleared his throat and said, "When she checks later, she won't be able to open your legs to check." His words made the two girls spit in unison. What she's checking for is just your fallen petals. Something like a fallen petals is simply too easy to fake. When the time comes, all you have to do is pretend to be raped and scream a few times. Empress Pei Man is limited by her mindset and won't suspect anything. Thanks to all the melodramatic TV series in his previous life, this kind of lousy idea could be easily made. That, Zhao Huana raised her hand timidly. How can I fake a bleeding? Song Qing couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Do you have to be so innocent? Do you need me to teach you this kind of thing? I really don't know, Zhao Huan pouted and looked extremely wronged. At this time, Zhao Yuan also poked her head out of the quilt. Song Qing looked at her and said, "You don't know either." Chapter 8:21. The two girls looked at each other. No matter how they listened, they felt that this mysterious brother-in-law was strange. However, at this point, they had no other choice but to blink their eyes and look at the man in front of them. Song Qing didn't expect that he would actually travel back to ancient times and give the little girl a physiological lesson. After thinking about the wording, he said, "In fact, it is very easy to fake this thing. Empress Pei Man has already put white silk on the bed. You just need to get some blood on it." "This blood, how do I do it?" The little girl's face turned red. In her mind, she had to maintain her virginity and get blood. How could this be possible? No. Song Qing looked at the two girls in front of him as if they were aliens. Why were they so cute? Seeing that the two girls were really at a loss, he had to say gloomily, "Give me your hand." The two girls hesitated for a long time before they slowly stretched out their hands. Song Qing was too lazy to talk nonsense with them. He grabbed the two girls' hands and instantly pierced their fingers with invisible sword energy. The tingling pain on their fingertips made the two girls exclaim at the same time. The two girls subconsciously wanted to take their hands back, but Song Qing didn't have the slightest intention of showing mercy. He grabbed the two girls' hands and didn't let go. The blood oozing from his fingers dripped on the white silk until two red flowers appeared on it. Only then did he nod with satisfaction. At this time, the two girls were already in tears from the pain. Song Qing secretly sighed. A loli is good, but isn't she a little too delicate? Because the three deliberately lowered their voices, Empress Pei Man outside the door couldn't hear the sound in the room for a long time. She was a little impatient when she suddenly heard the two girls' screams. She couldn't help but be overjoyed. It's done. But what made her a little puzzled was why the two of them made their voices at the same time. This thought flashed in Empress Pei Man's mind, and she didn't pay too much attention to it. Being in the top position for a long time made her develop a habit. She only needed to pay attention to the results, and the process would naturally be completed by the people below her. Maybe that dog slave Xingwo was smart enough, or maybe he used both hands, but who would care about these details? Song Qing was about to call Empress Pei Man in check, but when he saw the two girls' smooth, jade-like skin, he couldn't help but frown. "This is still not enough. Your bodies are too clean." "Clean isn't good?" Zhao Huaner asked blankly. "Please, first miss, please use your brains and think about it. You are pretending that you have just been pampered by the Jin Kingdom's emperor. How can there be no traces of disheveled clothes on your body?" Song Qing hesitated for a moment before continuing. "How about this? You guys pinch each other's bodies. The more red marks and bruises you make, the better." After listening to his explanation, the two girls roughly understood and began to pinch each other's exposed skin according to his instructions. Song Qing took a few glances and shook his head. "It's too light. You won't be able to leave a mark like this." "Excuse me." After that, without waiting for them to react, his hands flew up and down, quickly pressing on their bodies. The two women cried out in alarm, but the effect was immediate. All kinds of signs of abuse gradually appeared on their bodies. "Brother-in-law, it hurts." The two girls cried pitifully with tears in their eyes. Song Qing was speechless. "Don't use such misleading words, okay? If it doesn't hurt, you can't hide it." As soon as he finished speaking, Empress Peiman's voice came from the door. "Your Majesty, it's getting late. You still have to go back to read the memorials." Song Qing knew that she was urging him in a disguised way, so he pretended to be impatient and said, "I know what I'm doing." Then he lowered his voice and quickly told the two girls some things to pay attention to. "Your Majesty, you have the body of the Jin Kingdom and are related to thousands of people. You must not indulge in wine and women." Empress Peiman's voice gradually became stern. Song Qing knew that she was already impatient. Anyway, he had already told her what needed to be said, so he replied, Okay, I'll be right out." He turned back to the two girls and said, "I'll leave first. Take care. Brother-in-law, take care too." The eyes of the two girls were filled with reluctance. Although they had always felt that he had other intentions, compared to the fiendish demons of the Jin Kingdom, this mysterious brother-in-law made them feel much more at ease. Seeing Song Qing slowly come out, Empress Peiman glared at him fiercely and then quickly rushed into the curtain. Suddenly, the cries of the girls came from inside. After a while, Empress Peiman came out with a satisfied expression and quietly said, "Little Xing, you did well. Thank you for your praise, Your Highness." Song Qing asked tentatively, "Is there anything else that Your Highness wants me to do?" "No need. Change your clothes first." Empress Peiman secretly sneered. "I didn't treat you unfairly. Tonight, I let you, a little eunuch, enjoy the pleasures of the world. The other party is even a princess with golden branches and jade leaves. No matter how you look at it, your life is worth it. So, obediently die later." Song Qing was secretly disappointed. It seemed that Empress Peiman's subsequent plans did not need little Xing's participation at all. As he changed his clothes, he thought that he could quietly stay in the Hall of Peaceful Harmony later. In that way, all her plans would be clear. After Song Qing changed his clothes, Empress Peiman let him out from the side door and then waved to the shadow. "Come on, send little Xing out." "Yes." A man dressed as a guard flashed out with a lantern and said to Song Qing expressionlessly, "Eunuch Xing, this way, please." Song Qing's pupils shrank slightly. Although this man was not handsome, his steps were light and his breathing was even. Obviously, he was a master. He couldn't help but secretly sigh. No wonder so many people yearned for power. With power, there would be money and beauties. Even such a master could be ordered at will. Song Qing had been silently following the man. Noticing that they were going more and more remote, he understood and deliberately said, "Brother guard, have we gone the wrong way?" "No, this road is shorter." The guard replied coldly, without turning his head. "Closer to the road to the underworld?" Song Qing secretly sneered. Empress Peiman asked him to pretend to be the emperor. How could she tolerate him living in this world? All this was within his expectation, but he didn't expect that Empress Peiman would act so quickly. A day as husband and wife means endless love. This woman is really amazing when she is ruthless. Song Qing secretly smiled bitterly. However, he didn't know that in Empress Peiman's heart, he had always been a little eunuch. He thought that it was someone else that night. The guard walking in front suddenly stopped. Song Qing pretended not to know and asked, "Why don't you go?" "Because we have arrived." The guard said coldly. "Brother guard, you must be joking. There is still a distance from my residence." Song Qing looked frightened, but he was secretly alert. Chapter 822. Even though he was already prepared, Song Qing was still shocked by this ruthless blade. He could keenly feel that this blade carried an incomparably mournful and dense killing intent. It was unknown how many people had been killed to develop this kind of aura. If he was attacked by this strike without any preparation, he was not sure if he could dodge it. With a tap of his toes, he retreated several feet. Looking at the gash on his chest caused by the saber chi, Song Qing sighed with emotion. There are really hidden dragons and crouching tigers in this world. I didn't expect a nameless guard in the palace of the Jin Kingdom to have such skills. If your excellency were to make a living in Jianghu, you would definitely become famous. Isn't that better than being a servant in the palace? Compared to Song Qing-shu, the guard was obviously more surprised. He did not expect that his successful strike could be dodged by this little eunuch. He reacted quickly and said in a deep voice, "You are not little Xing. Who are you?" "Just like you, nameless." In his previous life, Song Qing-shu had seen all kinds of villains die because they talked too much. Although he did not consider himself a villain, he still agreed with the principle of not getting carried away. No matter who you are, you will die tonight. The guard did not talk nonsense. He waved his saber and slashed at Song Qing-shu. Feeling that the death chi on this person's saber was too strong, Song Qing-shu did not dare to be careless. He used his fingers to catch it. His whole body became blurred. The guard slashed 13 times in a row, but his clothes were not even touched. The guard was secretly surprised. It should be known that his saber technique was very strange. Each of the 13 strikes was stronger than the previous one. Every time he waved his saber, the momentum would increase. When the 13th strike came, it could be said to be invincible. Over the past few decades, he had relied on this set of saber techniques to kill countless people. There had been many experts whose martial arts were above his. In his opinion, those experts in Jianghu had a problem, and that was that they cared too much about their reputation and face. Because of their conceit, those experts insisted on taking his saber technique head-on, and in the end, they were defeated and killed. But this little eunuch in front of him seemed to be able to predict the future and did not take his saber technique at all. The 13 strikes in a row all hit nothing but air. Instead, the guard was hurt by the saber chi and suffered internal injuries. Knowing that he could not kill this mysterious eunuch, the guard was very decisive. He jumped and ran into the darkness. Song Qing-shu was stunned. A moment ago, this person was obviously going to kill the heavens, but the next moment, he turned around and ran away. The change was too fast. Just as he was about to chase after him, he suddenly realized something. He retracted his foot and quietly watched the man's back as he escaped. The imperial bodyguard was originally afraid of his Qinggong, but seeing that he did not pursue, he could not help but be overjoyed. But at this moment, an extremely cold and gloomy wind suddenly came from his side. The wind was so fast that he could not avoid it. Worried that he would be entangled by this person and cause Song Qing-shu to catch up, he did not want to stay. In a hurry, he waved his saber, intending to use the impact of the collision with the other's weapon to escape. But the expected impact did not come. Instead, he felt a sharp pain in his wrist. He looked back in horror and found that there were 5 bloody holes on his wrist. His gaze quickly moved upwards, only to see a beautiful woman with a face so pale that it was devoid of blood. Is she a ghost or an immortal? This was the last thought in the guard's life. The yellow-robed woman dealt with the escaping guard and walked towards Song Qing-shu with her clothes fluttering in the wind. She had a faint smile on her face. It is rumored that the Golden Snake King's martial arts are matchless. But seeing you today, it seems that you do not live up to your reputation. Song Qing-shu did not take it seriously and smiled. Compared to dying in the hands of a stinky man like me, I believe this person would rather die under the slender hands of a fairy. I am a kind-hearted person, so how can I let him die with hatred? You don't have to find a way to flatter me. Where are your eyes looking at? The yellow-robed woman originally had a calm appearance, but she soon found that Song Qing-shu's eyes kept looking at her buttocks. Her whole body suddenly exploded. I want to see what a fairy's flattery looks like. It is really different from ordinary flattery. Song Qing-shu laughed. The yellow-robed woman's chest violently rose up and down. She did not know why she could not maintain her usual indifferent temperament in front of this man. Every time, she would be half dead because of him. Since someone wants to kill you, it seems that you gained something from going to the Empress? The previous lesson was still fresh in her mind. The yellow-robed woman had also learned to be smart. She simply did not bicker with him and directly changed the topic. Seeing that she did not respond, Song Qing-shu could not help but feel a little bored. But when it came to business, his expression also became serious. It is still too early to say whether I gained anything or not. I still need to return to the Hall of Peaceful Harmony to confirm it. The yellow-robed woman revealed a look of disbelief. You were still thinking about that kind of thing at this time? Song Qing-shu was stunned at first, but then he realized that the other party thought that he wanted to find Empress Pei-man to have a deep exchange of the body. He could not help but feel depressed. This woman clearly looked otherworldly, so why was her thoughts so dirty? Do I look like such a pervert? He was too lazy to explain, and simply followed along with her words and said with a smile, "It is normal for a man to think about that kind of thing. It would be a problem if he did not think about it. Who told you not to do that kind of thing with me? If you were willing to sacrifice yourself, why would I care about that, Empress?" Shameless, vulgar. The yellow-robed woman's pale face became a little more beautiful, but she was not truly angry. After interacting with Song Qing-shu for this period of time, she had more or less grasped his temper. The more he spoke like this, the more it was clear that she had misunderstood. "Are you interested in accompanying me to the Hall of Peaceful Harmony?" Song Qing-shu thought about how the yellow-robed woman had been trying to save her sisters these past few years, so it would be good for her to meet Zhao Huan-er and Zhao Yuan-yuan. "Are you not afraid that I will disturb you and the Empress?" The yellow-robed woman's lips curved into a faint smile. "It's fine. I'm a person with a rather special hobby. If a woman is watching from the side, it will actually make me more excited," Song Qing-shu replied without changing his expression. "Bah!" The yellow-robed woman secretly regretted talking to him about this kind of topic. She made up her mind that if it was not necessary, she would not say another word to this scoundrel. Seeing the yellow-robed woman fly in the direction of the Hall of Peaceful Harmony without saying a word, Song Qing-shu was also worried that something might happen to the two girls who were left behind. Without wasting any more time, he used his qinggong and chased after her. Inside the Hall of Peaceful Harmony, Empress Pei-man covered her nose with a handkerchief and extinguished the sleeping incense by the bedside. Looking at the two unconscious girls on the bed, her mouth curved into a cold smile. What a pity, these two beauties. She stretched out her hands to grab the two girls' necks and gradually exerted more strength. Although the two girls were unconscious, their faces still showed signs of pain. Just as Empress Pei-man was about to exert more strength, she suddenly felt her wrists go numb and her hands immediately softened. "Who is it?" Empress Pei-man looked back in shock. "Your Highness has forgotten me so quickly." Song Qing-shu walked in with a smile on his face. "Why is it you?" Empress Pei-man subconsciously looked behind him. "Where is Lu Li?" So that person is called Lu Li. Unfortunately, he was caught to death by this fairy. Song Qing-shu revealed the figure of the yellow-robed woman behind him. When the yellow-robed woman heard this, she almost couldn't help but slap him. What did he mean by caught to death? That person clearly died under her 9 white-bone divine claw. Empress Pei-man's expression finally changed. Looking at the figure of the yellow-robed woman, she suddenly exclaimed, "You are the assassin that day." "Umph." The yellow-robed woman expressed her tacit agreement. "Then who are you?" Empress Pei-man didn't shout or anything. After all, she was a person who had seen the world. She knew that for them to appear here silently, there were definitely experts among experts. Facing such experts, as long as she showed any signs of opening her mouth, the other party would be able to instantly suppress her. There was no need to humiliate herself. Song Qing-shu took off the mask of little Xinghua. "Finally, I don't have to pretend to be a eunuch. To be honest, this thing isn't that comfortable to wear. All right, we can get to know each other again. This one's surname is Song Qing-shu. Greetings, Your Highness. You are that golden snake trader?" Empress Pei-man opened her mouth in surprise. As soon as the words left her mouth, she immediately realized that it was inappropriate. After all, she was currently under the control of the other party. If she angered the other party, it would be troublesome. That's me." Song Qing-shu didn't seem to be angry at all. Empress Pei-man finally had a chance to carefully look at the other party. With sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, he was full of heroic spirit. He didn't look like one of those fierce-looking traitors. He looked more like an elegant young master. Suddenly remembering something, Empress Pei-man's heart jumped. That night was you?" Song Qingshu secretly glanced at the yellow-robed woman and nodded awkwardly. That night, Your Highness kindly invited me, so this one had no choice but to accept. The yellow-robed woman secretly spat. Adulterous couple. Empress Pei Man suddenly giggled. If I knew it was you, I wouldn't have had to be so worried these days. Your Highness, your current mood doesn't seem right. Shouldn't you show more fear? Song Qingshu calmly looked into her eyes. If I fell into the hands of someone else, I might really be afraid. But falling into the hands of my lover, why should I be afraid? Empress Pei Man's voice was filled with a different meaning. Song Qingshu was speechless for a moment. The yellow-robed woman next to him didn't want to listen to the two of them flirting. She directly walked to the bedside. When she saw the appearance of the two young girls, she couldn't help but exclaim, "Who are Yuan Yuan?" When she was rescued, these two younger sisters were still in their infancy. However, after entering the Jin Kingdom's palace, she had already visited the laundry yard countless times. Naturally, she recognized the two sisters. That was why when she saw the Prince of Wei's disrespect to them, she attacked him out of anger. The yellow-robed woman checked the pulse of the two and knew that they had only fainted after being drugged. She had just breathed a sigh of relief when she immediately saw the messy marks on their bodies and the two dazzling red flowers on the bedsheet. Her eyes suddenly became cold. She turned her head to stare at Empress Pei Man and asked in a deep voice, "Who did this?" Song Qingshu secretly cursed. Empress Pei Man had already shifted her gaze to him. Of course, it's this romantic and elegant prince song. Chapter 823. I'll go. Song Qingshu dodged the yellow-robed woman's angry attack. The marble floor where he had been standing was shattered by the finger chi, causing him to be speechless. Seeing that the yellow-robed woman continued to chase him, Song Qingshu hurriedly said, "This is a misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding? You just walked out of this hall. If it wasn't you, then who else could it be?" The yellow-robed woman's face was frosty, and her moves became more and more ruthless. "You are a greedy, lecherous, and dissolute person. I didn't expect that you wouldn't even let such a young girl go." Song Qingshu couldn't help but reply, Hey, don't say that I'm evil. These two girls are indeed a bit lowly, but strictly speaking, they're at the legal age of marriage in this world." "You're still talking?" When the woman in yellow heard this, she was even angrier. The 9-een white bone claw was originally sinister and treacherous, but when she used it, it was overflowing with celestial aura. Even if each move was fatal, it was still extremely pleasing to the eye and the mind. From the corner of his eyes, Song Qingshu noticed that Empress Pei Man was quietly retreating towards the hall. While dodging the yellow-robed woman's attacks, he shot out a wisp of wind from his finger to knock her down. Seizing the opportunity, he said, "Stop fighting. You've really misunderstood." "Misunderstood? Don't tell me that you didn't do this to them." The yellow-robed woman displayed the martial arts of the 9-een manual to the extreme, alternating the 9-een white bone claw, heart-destroying palm, and great demon subduing fist. Combined with the qin gong of the manual, the timing of each move was so exquisite that Song Qingshu sighed at his own inferiority. The 9-een manual could actually be used like this. If he wasn't familiar with the 9-een manual, under this round of attacks like a storm, he would probably have been battered and exhausted. "I did indeed do this to them, but..." Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "It's good that you admit it." The yellow-clothed woman's sleeve shook, and a flexible ribbon appeared out of nowhere and attacked Song Qingshu from a crafty angle. Song Qingshu's waist was wrapped by the ribbon, but he didn't resist and allowed the other party to pull him over. However, the yellow-robed woman was also very cautious. As he was being pulled over, she flicked her wrist, and the ribbon was like an immortal binding rope that wrapped around Song Qingshu tightly. "Why don't you resist?" The yellow-robed woman didn't expect that she would be able to restrain him so easily, so she asked subconsciously, "You're so angry. If I don't let you vent your anger, how can you calm down?" Song Qingshu smiled. The yellow-robed woman held her breath and couldn't help but snort. "I said I'm going to kill you. I'm right here. You can kill me if you want." Song Qing-shu straightened his neck, and a playful smile hung on his face. But I don't believe you're really willing to kill me. Don't overestimate yourself. The yellow-robed woman's face was expressionless. Under the strength of her 5 fingers, her originally white and translucent fingers seemed to have a layer of sparkling, jade-like light. She pressed down on the top of Song Qingshu's head. Even when her fingertips touched Song Qingshu's scalp, he didn't have the slightest intention of resisting. The yellow-robed woman's face was gloomy. She coldly snorted and withdrew her hand. Don't misunderstand. The reason why I'm not killing you is not because I'm unwilling to kill you. It's because I still need you to help me save people. After my pitiful sisters are rescued, I'll slowly settle today's debt with you. I know. Can you put away your rope now? Song Qing-shu replied with a grin. Humph. The yellow-robed woman looked away guiltily. She flicked her wrist, and the ribbon that was wrapped around Song Qing-shu instantly retracted into her sleeve. Hey, how did you hide this thing? As soon as Song Qing-shu was free, he grabbed her hand and looked inside her sleeve. What are you doing? The yellow-robed woman hurriedly shook him off. Her expression was both embarrassed and angry. I'm just curious how you hid such a long ribbon on your body. The scene of Xiao Longnu's ribbon fluttering in the wind appeared in Song Qingshu's mind again. These days, if one didn't know how to do this kind of thing, it wouldn't be good to call herself a fairy. It's none of your business. The yellow-robed woman's face reddened. She knew that he was being shameless. She ignored him and walked straight to the 2 girls. Looking at their messy clothes, she couldn't help but turn around and glare at Song Qingshu. Only then did she take out a porcelain bottle from her bosom and place it under the 2 girls' noses. In Jianghu, there were all kinds of strange things like knockout drugs and sleeping fumes. Therefore, those who had the means to do so would prepare a bottle of antidote in advance in case of emergency. The antidote was carefully concocted and often carried a pungent smell. Cough, cough. Being smelled by the antidote, the 2 girls choked and coughed. Only then did they slowly wake up. The yellow-robed woman hurriedly picked up the clothes that were scattered on the ground and draped them over their bodies, covering their snow-white bodies. Who are you, Yuan, you're awake? The yellow-robed woman thought to herself. Although that bastard Song Qingshu is hateful, what's done can't be undone. If Song Qingshu can really save those sisters, I'll be the matchmaker for him. No matter what, I'll make him responsible for my sisters. The 2 girls had just woken up and found that there were a few strangers in the hall. They subconsciously shrank to a corner of the bed. Hearing the yellow-robed woman's gentle tone, they raised their heads and looked at each other. They saw a woman sitting at the head of the bed, looking at them with concern. Her incomparably beautiful face made people subconsciously like her. Sister, you are? She's the 19th sister I mentioned to you just now. Song Qingshu introduced. The 2 girls were now in rags. Seeing a strange man so close to them, their reserved nature instantly made them pale. Song Qingshu looked depressed. I say, you're too heartless. It's only been a while, and you already don't recognize me? Zhao Yuan was the more attentive one. She recognized his voice and asked with some uncertainty, your brother-in-law, Yuan, is the most obedient. You recognize me immediately. Song Qingshu's praise made Zhao Yuan blush. But brother-in-law, you, how did you change your appearance? Zhao stared at him with a puzzled expression. In order to deceive people, I wore a mask. This is my true appearance. Song Qingshu held up the Zayok Singwell mask and gestured. The 2 girls looked surprised. Zhao Yuan suddenly added in a low voice, brother-in-law, you look much better than before. Really? I think so too. Song Qingshu smiled and answered almost shamelessly. The yellow-robed woman next to him was speechless. She thought, these 2 heartless sisters are so intimate with the bastard Song Qingshu, but they don't even pay attention to me, their elder sister. Wait, why do they call Song Qingshu brother-in-law? With a bad guess in her heart, the yellow-robed woman asked with a somewhat unfriendly expression, what do you call this bastard? Brother-in-law? Zhao answered naturally. He's our 19th sister's man. After saying this, the confused girl just reacted, you're our 19th sister? It was the first time to ask for monthly votes. How could she pretend to be very familiar? Chapter 824. In I'm Your 19th Sister, Ing Luo. Seeing her two younger sisters' innocent looks, the yellow-robed woman smiled. A few days ago, I came to the laundry yard to see you two. 19th Sister. The two girls had suffered too much tonight. When they saw each other, they felt a sense of closeness and threw themselves into the yellow-robed woman's embrace, sobbing. Be good, don't cry. In the future, Big Sister will protect you two and not let you two be bullied. The yellow-robed woman gently patted the two girls' backs and comforted them. After a while, the two girls gradually calmed down. The yellow-robed woman suddenly thought of the brother-in-law they spoke of and frowned. Why did you call this bastard brother-in-law? Brother-in-law told us himself. The two girls looked at her blankly. Brother-in-law said that he saved you and you were very grateful to him. Adding on the fact that the two of you had been together for a long time, you ended up repaying him with your body. The yellow-clothed woman's teeth chattered when she heard this. She glared at Song Qing-shu fiercely. Song Qing-shu quickly waved his hand. This is just a misunderstanding. If I didn't say that, how could I gain their trust so quickly and make them do as I say? The yellow-robed woman's face darkened. So you used brother-in-law's name to cheat them of their innocence. Song Qing-shu felt that he was making things worse and could only look at the two girls for help. Yuan, quickly explain to your sister what happened. The two girls stared at him in a daze. Zhao Hu'er pouted. After all this time, you're not our brother-in-law. You're really bad. Zhao Yuan also agreed. That's right. Just now you were talking about keeping the goodies within the family. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have let you. Seeing the yellow-robed woman tremble more and more, as if she could not control her anger at any time, Song Qing-shu quickly interrupted them. Stop. Are you trying to kill me by speaking so ambiguously? Don't talk anymore. I'll ask you two questions. You two answer one question. After that, he didn't wait for the two women's reaction and quickly asked the first question. Are you still virgins? Yes, but you. Zhao Yuan blushed and was about to say something when Song Qing-shu interrupted her in a hurry. Since that's the case, let's move on. I have a question. Did I teach you to fake the falling red with the blood from your fingers? It's the blood from our fingers, but you were the one who caused it. Thinking of the pain, Zhao Huaner looked at him bitterly. Song Qing-shu quietly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Fortunately, he didn't let the two girls explain themselves. If they kept saying things that could easily cause misunderstandings, he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. One last question. Do we purposely leave these marks on you to deceive the Empress? The two girls nodded in unison, but they both blushed as they looked at him. In a small voice, they added, It was also because of you. Who told you to be too weak to leave marks? At the time, the situation was urgent, so I had to do it for you. Song Qing-shu felt that he had a clear conscience, so he spoke with confidence. Okay, I understand. The yellow-robed girl looked on coldly from the side. She had pretty much recovered the truth of the matter. She had misunderstood Song Qing-shu before, but he wasn't so innocent. At least he had taken advantage of the two sisters. Let's save them first. We'll talk about the rest later. Finishing, he went to pick up the two sisters. Wait. Song Qing-shu unconsciously stopped his hand. You're just going to take them away like this? What else? The yellow-robed girl looked at him strangely. Although we can save them like this, we will definitely alert the enemy. At that time, it will be difficult to save the remaining sisters in the laundry yard. Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly. What's so difficult about this? The yellow-robed girl pointed at Empress Pei Man. As long as we kill this woman, no one will know what our goal is. Also, the death of the Empress is such a big thing. Perhaps it will divert the attention of the gold men, making it convenient for us to go to the laundry yard to save them. This bitch. Empress Pei Man cursed inwardly and said hurriedly, if Ben Gong dies and these two girls disappear, the investigators will definitely start with them. Every woman in the laundry yard will be captured and interrogated. At that time, it will be even more difficult for you to save them. The yellow-robed girl's eyebrows furrowed slightly. She knew that what she said was not without reason. Song Qingshu secretly admired this woman for being able to instantly analyze the relationship between the two. As for the reason that convinced the yellow-robed woman, she was indeed worthy of being the mistress of the harem of a country. She must have gained a lot of experience from all these years of fighting in the palace. But we can't just let you go like this. Song Qingshu smiled. He knew that this woman definitely had a way to save her life. It just depended on whether she was smart or not. It was better for her to suggest it herself than for him to suggest it. We can make a deal. Empress Peiman's emotions slowly calmed down. There was a trace of calmness in her voice. What kind of deal? Song Qingshu asked without batting an eyelid. From your conversation just now, it should be to save the Song dynasty princesses who are being held captive in the laundry yard. Although your martial arts are high and it's not a problem to save one or two, it's impossible to save all of them. But with Ben Gong's help, it won't be difficult for you to save them, Empress Peiman said slowly. As expected, the yellow-robed girl was moved. She nodded and said, "Okay, if you help us save them, we can let you go." Empress Peiman laughed lightly. There was a trace of disdain in her smile. Ben Gong only makes deals with truly intelligent people, such as this Prince Song. The yellow-robed girl's expression did not look good when her intelligence was looked down upon. Song Qingshu hurriedly said, "Of course. What does Empress need us to do? This is how a smart person should talk." Empress Peiman glanced at the yellow-robed girl. "Originally, killing me would do more harm than good. For the sake of your sisters, the possibility of you choosing to kill me is almost zero. In the end, I help you save people, but I don't get anything in return. This isn't a good deal. Then what do you want?" The yellow-robed girl asked in annoyance. "Stay in the palace for a while and help me deal with someone." Empress Peiman ignored her and looked directly at Song Qingshu. "Okay." Song Qingshu's answer was also very straightforward. The yellow-robed girl hurriedly pulled on his sleeve and said quietly, "You don't know anything yet you agree. It's very likely that she will use you as a knife. It's hard to avoid problems. It's the opposite." Song Qingshu shook his head and looked back at Empress Peiman. "Only when we are completely bound together will she do her best to help us save people. A deal should be a win-win situation." End of this chapter. Chapter 825. Empress Peiman giggled. "Little Xing, I've noticed that after you take off your mask, not only do you look better, you also speak more intelligently. Thank you for your praise, Your Highness." Song Qingshu smiled. "Your Highness, please tell me who I'm going to deal with. I see that you've prepared in such a hurry. I'm afraid you don't have much time left." Empress Peiman's gaze fell on herself. "Release my acupoint first. Is this how you treat your business partner?" "No problem." Song Qingshu was straightforward. With a flick of his finger, he released her acupoint. Empress Peiman felt her whole body relax. She stood up and stretched, revealing the size of her breast that made the two young girls envious. Then, she naturally sat down on the couch. There is not much time left. If I'm not wrong, Wei Wang should have entered the palace by now. Wei Wang. A light flashed in Song Qingshu's mind. "You're going to deal with Wei Wang? Who else does young master think I'm going to deal with?" Empress Peiman looked at him with a faint smile. Song Qingshu's thoughts became clearer. Because she asked him to pretend to be the emperor, he always thought she was going to deal with Jin Shizong. There were too many questions that he couldn't figure out. Now that he knew the target was Wei Wang, everything became clear. "Why do you want to deal with Wei Wang?" Song Qingshu asked curiously. "It's simple. My son died young. Now, he's the only son left. If this little bastard ascends the throne, my fate will be miserable." Empress Peiman's face flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. She then glanced at the yellow-robed woman. This young lady should know this the best. She saw how Wei Wang treated me when he broke into the Hall of Peace and Harmony. Song Qingshu nodded inwardly. He was there too. Wei Wang hadn't become the emperor yet, but he treated Empress Peiman like that. If he really became the emperor, Empress Peiman would definitely suffer. But he's your husband's only son. If something happens to him, won't the throne fall into the hands of the side branch? The yellow-robed girl had received the orthodox royal education of this world. No matter how wrong Wei Wang was, he was still the rightful successor of Shizong's bloodline. Compared to the fall of the imperial family, personal honor and disgrace were nothing. What does that have to do with me? Empress Pei Man sneered. The throne has fallen. It's better in anyone's hands than the Prince of Wei's. The yellow-robed woman had a look of disapproval on her face, but Song Qingshu understood her choice very well. As the saying goes, after I die, I don't care what happens next. Since you said that Wei Wang is almost here, let's cut to the chase. What do you need us to help you with? Song Qingshu asked quickly. My expert Luli died in your hands. He was originally used to deal with Wei Wang's hidden guard, so the first thing I want you to do is to help me get rid of that hidden guard. Empress Pei Man knew that time was of the essence. Her expression became serious, and she didn't beat around the bush. No problem. Song Qingshu nodded. Then how do you plan to help us save those princesses from the laundry brothel? The more urgent the situation, the easier it was to bargain. Song Qingshu deeply understood this principle. They're all controlled by the laundry brothel with the carefree powder. I can provide you with the antidote for the carefree powder. Empress Pei Man agreed without hesitation. Is there an antidote for that? It can't be the carefree powder itself, right? Song Qingshu asked suspiciously. Of course there's an antidote. Empress Pei Man said quickly. Although the carefree powder itself can also be used as an antidote, it can only be used temporarily. It can't be considered a real antidote. I'll believe you for now. Song Qingshu asked again. Is there anything else you need our help with? Yes. Empress Pei Man pointed at the two girls on the bed. I need their statements. So you're planning to frame Wei Wang. Song Qingshu roughly understood what her plan was. That's not a problem. I can have them cooperate with you. However, I'm very curious. If we didn't appear, how would you have gotten their statements? Sometimes the dead itself is a kind of statement. Empress Pei Man's face was calm. Song Qingshu raised his eyebrows. This woman was indeed not a normal person. He had to be careful when working with her in the future. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know when he'd be tricked by her. If we can provide statements according to your requirements, then what else can you help us with? Song Qingshu asked again. With the antidote, you can save those people from the laundry brothel. However, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for you to safely send so many people out of the city. I can give you a gold medal. When the time comes, no one will dare to check you. This chapter is not finished. Please turn to the next page, replied Queen Man. The yellow-robed girl next to her frowned. I don't need your help. I've already bribed a spy. When the time comes, we'll naturally be able to pass through the city gates. Empress Pei Man sneered. The guards at the city gates usually collect money in private and turn a blind eye to the merchants' illegal goods. When the time comes for the laundry brothel to be in trouble, the palace will be furious. The entire city will be under martial law. Who would have the guts to let you out of the city at that time? The yellow-robed girl was stunned. She had to admit that what Empress Pei Man said made sense. The spy she bribed might not be reliable. Song Qingshu agreed with Empress Pei Man's gold medal. Is there anything else you need our help with? I still need you to stay in the palace for a while. In the coming days, I may need your help. Empress Pei Man looked at him quietly. Song Qingshu frowned slightly. Your request is too complicated. What do you plan to use in exchange? He didn't refuse immediately. After all, Wang Yinliang was eyeing the goodbye covetously. Since he had agreed to help Tang Kuobian, he had to help him get rid of this hidden danger. Otherwise, if anything happened to the goodbye, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. Empress Pei Man answered, I can't think of a way to divert the troops who will be pursuing them. Otherwise, even if they escape the capital, it will be difficult for them to return to the Song Kingdom safely. Song Qingshu shook his head. This price is not enough. Empress Pei Man smiled and nodded. I also feel that it is not enough. How about this? If you need anything in the future, you can ask me. As long as it is within my capabilities, I will satisfy you. Deal. Song Qingshu asked for more details. In fact, both sides knew that they were both smart people. They knew what they wanted from the other side and wouldn't make things too difficult for the other side. As soon as the transaction was completed, the voice of Prince Wei could be heard from outside the hall. Your son Daoji has come to pay his respects to your highness." Empress Peiman gave the two a meaningful look. Song Qingshu and the yellow-robed girl nodded slightly. With a light tap of their feet, they flew to the beam. Zhao Huan, and Zhao Yuanyuan put on their clothes and returned to their beds. The third chapter, there are 2 more chapters after that. Please give me your monthly tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 826. Empress Peiman hurriedly tidied up her appearance and said softly, "King Wei, please come in." The yellow-robed woman and Song Qingshu hid on the beam together. They were very close to each other and frowned when they saw the situation below. She moved closer to Song Qingshu's ear and whispered, "The rules of every country are similar. After dark, no one is allowed to enter or leave the palace without the emperor's permission. It's midnight now, but King Wei, as a prince, has sneaked into the palace. This is a huge taboo. I don't know how that woman tricked him into coming in." The beauty beside him breathed out. Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel relaxed and happy. "It's actually very simple. Just use your 2 sisters as bait." The yellow-robed woman frowned and was about to explode when Song Qingshu hurriedly covered her mouth. "Don't be agitated. Since we're here, of course we won't let your sisters suffer." The yellow-robed woman blushed and slapped his hand away. She whispered, "Am I such a reckless woman in your heart?" Song Qingshu chuckled. "Of course not. You're a fairy. Stop talking. Look at the situation below." The yellow-robed woman turned her head and added in a small voice, "Also, don't get touchy in the future. I'm not as easily bullied as who were in Yuanyuan." Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. He shrugged his shoulders and began to look at the situation below. After King Wei came in, he looked around and saw that only Empress Peiman was in the hall. His heart skipped a beat. He turned around and said to the heir behind him, "You can leave too. Your subordinate's duty is to protect your highness. I must stay by your side." An extremely cold voice came from the shadows in the hall. On the beam, Song Qingshu and the yellow-robed woman looked at each other. Although they had seen King Wei's secret guard in action last time, they still felt that he was mysterious and unpredictable. Especially his ability to hide his presence was too heaven-defying. When King Wei came in, he took the opportunity to hide himself. If they hadn't been prepared, it would have been very difficult to find him. The two of them didn't dare to speak anymore, as they were worried that the person would discover them. Wei Wang did not mind being rejected by his subordinate. He turned around and smiled at Empress Peiman. "This servant of mine is so stubborn. Your Highness, you won't mind, right? This person is loyal to his master, so of course I don't mind." Empress Peiman's voice was gentle, but she was sneering in her heart. Wei Wang knew that she would not leave, but he still said that to warn her not to play any tricks. "Your ladyship has invited me so late at night. I wonder what is the matter." Prince Wei found a chair and sat down with a playful look on his face. When the princes came of age, they had to leave the palace to live. Without the emperor's summons, they were not allowed to enter the palace without permission. This was an iron law. However, he was Jin Shizong's only son. Wei Wang believed that if the empress wanted to punish him with this crime, he would only be asking for humiliation. So he knew that the empress might not have good intentions, but he still came. Empress Peiman leisurely walked in front of Wei Wang and looked at him deeply. Just as Wei Wang was secretly on guard, Empress Peiman knelt down beside his feet. "What are you doing?" Wei Wang was shocked. Even though he did not think much of Peiman, she was still the empress of a country and his elder. It was still very shocking for her to kneel in front of him like this. Not to mention Prince Wei. Even Song Qingshu and the yellow-robed girl on the beam were shocked. They knew that Peiman was clearly plotting against Prince Wei, but she knelt down so readily. They could not help but feel a sense of absurdity and shudder. "Your concubine has offended Wei Wang in these years. This is to apologize to Wei Wang. I hope that you will be magnanimous and not hate me in the future," Empress Peiman said with a weak expression. "Empress, what are you doing? I don't understand." Even though Wei Wang looked terrified on the surface, in reality, seeing his sworn enemy kneeling in front of him gave him an unimaginable thrill. However, he was still able to maintain a trace of clarity. He knew that there must be something wrong with this abnormal situation, so he didn't dare to reply rashly. Empress Pei Man sighed faintly. Since it's like this, your concubine will say it directly. I hope your highness doesn't mind. All these years, the emperor's health has been deteriorating day by day. I don't know when he will not be able to hold on. Your highness is the only son of the emperor and is destined to become the emperor in the future. In the past few years, your concubine was ignorant and offended your highness. Now, I have completely thought it through. I know that your highness will be my only support in the future, so I plan to resolve the misunderstanding between us as soon as possible. If your highness ascends to the throne in the future, your concubine will not dare to fight with Sister Yuan Fei for the position of Empress Dowager. I only ask that your highness make your concubine an old concubine and bestow 2 eunuchs and palace maids to serve your concubine for the rest of my life. Listening to Pei Man speak slowly, the smile on Wei Wang's face grew wider and wider. Almost every word of the other party struck a chord in his heart. After listening to the end, he finally believed that this woman in front of him had sincerely given in to him. After all, he could not find any reason for her to lie. As he was destined to be the future emperor, any schemes and plots would be destroyed in the face of this iron-like truth. Your Highness, quickly get up. Wei Wang had been educated by the royal family since he was young and still paid attention to his table manners. He couldn't keep Empress Pei Man kneeling like this. He hurriedly reached out to help her up. When he touched her voluptuous body, his heart couldn't help but sway. However, he still knew what was important and knew that he couldn't touch this woman at this time. If he did, after he ascended to the throne, he would be the only man left in the palace, and everything would be under his control. In the inner courtyard of the palace, wouldn't he be able to play with this woman however he wanted? If your highness does not forgive your concubine doesn't dare to get up. At such a close distance, Empress Pei Man could faintly see Wei Wang's reaction and her eyes turn cold. Since your highness has thought through the pros and cons, how could this prince be a narrow-minded person? Your highness can be at ease. After this prince ascends to the throne, your highness will definitely be the Empress Dowager. However, your highness will have to be wrong to be the Empress Dowager of the East and West palaces together with this prince's mother. Wei Wang also knew that fighting with Empress Pei Man wouldn't have any good results. If he could obtain her support, everything would become smoother. To be able to stand side by side with little sister Yuan is this concubine's pleasant surprise. How can I feel wronged? Empress Pei Man suddenly revealed a fawning smile. Your concubine knows that your highness took a fancy to the 2 little palace maids by my side last time, so I specially prepared a gift for you tonight. I hope your highness will kindly accept it. Oh, Wei Wang followed her gaze and noticed the 2 hazy figures on the phoenix couch. In his mind, he thought of the 2 beautiful palace maids' delicate faces last time, and his heart swayed. Since it's a gift from your highness, this prince won't stand on ceremony. Chapter 4, end of this chapter. Chapter 8:27. Wei Wang was not worried that there would be any problems. After the assassination incident, he took the opportunity to change all the guards in the Hall of Peace with his own people. There were also secret guards protecting him in the room. It could be said that the entire Hall of Peace was under his control. He even had a kind of confidence that even if he pressed down and humiliated Empress Pei Man at this time, no one in the palace would know what happened. Although he was lecherous, he had not lost his mind. He knew that Pei Man's identity was special, and he could not touch her for the time being. However, he did not have to worry so much about the little palace maids beside her. If your highness does not mind, you can let them serve you here. Empress Pei Man stood at the side obediently, but she sneered in her heart. King Wei hesitated for a moment. Even though his rationality told him that bringing these 2 little palace maids back to the palace was the wisest choice, but when he saw the phoenix bed not far away, a nefarious fire rose in his heart. This was because this bed was too special. In the entire Jin Kingdom, There was only one man who could climb onto this bed, and that was the emperor. Now that he had the opportunity to enjoy it on this bed in advance, the temptation was too great. How can I do that? Even though Wei Wang said that, he still walked towards the phoenix couch without hesitation. Lifting the curtain around the phoenix bed, Wei Wang saw Zhao Yuan and Zhao, who were curled up in the quilt, and looked at him timidly. He could not help but swallow his saliva and look back at Empress Pei Man with a smile that was not a smile. "Your Highness, are you planning to watch from the side?" Empress Pei Man's face was glowing, and she revealed a charming smile. "Your Highness, do you want me to see?" Wei Wang's heart skipped a beat when he saw her charming smile. He thought that she had only seen the weak and sickly father. If she saw this prince's heroic appearance, her heart might be moved, and she would take the initiative to throw herself into his arms. "If your Highness wants to see, then look. This prince does not mind." Wei Wang looked back at the two girls in the quilt, rubbed his hands, and rushed in. "Little beauties, this prince is coming." At this time, the yellow-robed girl could not bear it anymore. She stretched out her 9 white-bone claws and flew behind Wei Wang. "Your Highness, be careful." The hidden guard hiding in the shadows felt that tonight was a bit strange, so he had been on full alert. When he saw the yellow-robed woman come out, he quickly pulled out his thin sword and attacked the yellow-robed woman. Because the yellow-robed woman's speed was too fast, in order to save Wei Wang, he could only push all the power in his body to the limit. His entire body shot toward the phoenix couch like a shooting star. He had absolute confidence that he would definitely be able to stab the yellow-robed woman before she attacked Wei Wang. Suddenly, his whole body shook. It was as if he had been hit by a heavy hammer. On the wall beside him, a look of disbelief appeared on his face. He struggled to raise his head and look to the side. He saw a handsome young man standing not far away with an indifferent expression. How could there be someone else in this house? When he entered this house, he had already used his chi to check the entire room. Other than the two girls on the phoenix couch, he did not sense anyone else. Now that two people had appeared, it meant that their martial arts were above his. His Highness is finished. This was the last thought in his mind before he breathed his last. The only reason he did not die immediately after being struck by Song Qingshu's full force attack was because he wanted to see who the attacker was. Now that his wish had been fulfilled, he could no longer hold on. At this time, the yellow-robed girl had also restrained Wei Wang. She turned around and saw the scene of Song Qingshu killing the hidden guard. The hidden guard's speed was already fast enough, but Song Qingshu was like an invisible ray of light. In an instant, he appeared beside the hidden guard. A light palm strike was silent, but it instantly broke the opponent's heart meridian. The yellow-robed girl was shocked. She knew that Song Qingshu's martial arts were very high, but she did not expect it to be this high. She had previously fought with this hidden guard in Taihe Palace Hall and knew that his martial arts were not below hers. But now he was actually killed by Song Qingshu in one move. Even though Song Qingshu had the advantage of a sneak attack, to make an expert of this level unable to fight back and be killed in an instant, there were probably not many people in the entire Jianghu that could do this. If the yellow-robed girl was shocked to see the hidden guard being killed by Song Qingshu in an instant, then Wei Wang was scared out of his wits. These past few years, the hidden guard had helped him through countless dangers. In his heart, this hidden guard was the person with the highest martial arts in the world. Who would have thought that he could not even withstand one move from this man? "You? What are you doing?" Wei Wang was about to shout for the guards to come in, but the yellow-robed girl was already prepared and instantly sealed his mute acupuncture point. Helpless, he could only place his only hope on Empress Pei Man. But when he saw Empress Pei Man standing beside the two mysterious experts with a cold smile on her face, his heart finally fell into despair. "I am the Emperor's only son. Could it be that a slut like you would dare to kill me?" Unfortunately, his acupuncture point had been sealed, so his words all turned into meaningless whimpers. This Empress knows what you are thinking at this time, but unfortunately, this Empress has no interest in talking nonsense with you. Empress Pei Man looked at him calmly, then said to Song Qingshu, "I will have to trouble young master to knock him out." Song Qingshu was very satisfied with her tone. With a tap of his finger, Wei Wang's eyes rolled back, and he fainted. What are you going to do next? Song Qingshu asked curiously. I will go find the emperor in a moment, but before that, I need to have a good talk with these two young ladies. When the time comes, when His Majesty asks, you have to answer like this. Empress Pei Man carefully instructed Zhao Yuanyuan and Zhao Hu-er. Song Qingshu and the yellow-robed girl were shocked as they listened. This woman was really too ruthless. After instructing the two young ladies, Empress Pei Man suddenly said, No, there is still a flaw. What flaw? Song Qingshu asked curiously. This is all thanks to your previous reminder. Empress Pei Man looked at the two young ladies. The marks on their bodies do indeed look like they have just been ravaged, but they are missing the most important thing. What is it? Since it concerned her younger sister, the yellow-robed girl had to be cautious. Wei Wang's. Empress Pei Man lowered her voice and said a word. Hearing this, the other three women were secretly shocked. Even Song Qingshu rolled his eyes. If you want to do it yourself. They won't help you with this. Song Qingshu said gloomily. Empress Pei Man said sourly, Of course I'll do it. Are you going to let your inexperienced little lovers touch Wei Wang? Song Qingshu frowned slightly. Forget it, I'll help you. You? Not to mention Empress Pei Man. Even the yellow-robed girl and the two young ladies stared at him in shock. You are women. Can your thoughts not be so dirty? Song Qingshu looked at their expressions and knew that they had misunderstood. He couldn't help feeling depressed. I just have a trick. Saying this, he pointed at Wei Wang's waist. The unconscious Wei Wang suddenly trembled, and a large patch of his pants quickly became wet. Do the rest yourself. I don't want to touch other men's things. Song Qingshu felt a chill and said to Empress Pei Man before leaving. That, Zhao Hu suddenly said timidly, who doesn't want to be stuck with this man's disgusting things. Zhao Yuanyuan nodded in agreement. Yuanyuan also doesn't want to. This time it was Empress Pei Man's turn to be dumbfounded. How can I not be sticky? At that time, the emperor will definitely send someone to check your body. If there is a flaw, not only will I be finished, you will also die. Those sisters in the laundry yard will not be able to be saved. But I really don't want to touch this man's things. Zhao Hu blushed slightly, suddenly glanced at Song Qingshu and muttered in a low voice. If it was brother-in-laws, then it would be better. Zhao Yuanyuan next to her also made an imperceptible sound of agreement. Today I received a lot of monthly votes. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your support. End of this chapter. Chapter 828. Empress Pei Man turned around and looked at Song Qingshu with a faint smile. The yellow-robed woman's expression was even more subtle, and her angry eyes almost set Song Qingshu on fire. Why are you looking at me? I'm not the one who said that. Song Qingshu was also depressed. I'm obviously being teased by these two girls, and I'm the victim, okay? What nonsense are you two girls talking about? Is this something I can help with? Song Qingshu ruffled Zhao Huan, and Zhao Yuanyuan's hair. It felt good, and he finally got to try the Japanese way of touching their heads. Anyway, we don't want that man's dirty things to stick to us. Zhao Huan pouted, obviously feeling that her request was not taken seriously, and she was extremely dissatisfied. Stop messing around. Song Qingshu turned to Pei Man. There's no need to make it so complicated. When the time comes, the scene will be chaotic, and no one will notice these details. I don't believe that we'll be so unlucky as to run into Sherlock Holmes or Conan. Who is Sherlock? Holmes, Conan? That's a strange name. Is he from the Western regions? After a moment of absent-mindedness, Empress Pei Man shook her head and said, No, we can't hope to get lucky. You must know that if we are discovered, you and this lady might be able to escape due to your high martial arts skills, but the others will suffer a miserable fate. Seeing Song Qingshu frowning in silence, Empress Pei Man suddenly said, Prince Song, there's something I want to talk to you about alone. We're in the same boat now. What else can we talk about in front of everyone? The yellow-robed woman said unhappily. Empress Pei Man smiled charmingly. This matter is extremely dangerous, and I might not even see tomorrow's sun. Do you want to hear my intimate words with my lover before I die? Adulterous couple. The yellow-robed woman spat, then turned around and walked to the bed to talk to her two younger sisters. At the same time, she also signaled them to go away. Empress, what do you want? Is it okay now? Song Qing-shu let Empress Pei Man pull him to the corner. He didn't believe Pei Man's nonsense about revealing her true feelings. Young master. Empress Pei Man glanced at him with hidden bitterness. Seeing that he was unmoved, she lowered her voice and continued. Young master, do you know that the reason why I persisted in sticking that thing on their bodies is actually because of you? 444 is identical to. See greater than or equal to OM Song, Qing-shu frowned. What do you mean? As far as I know, young master is now a tiger in Shandong and has formed his own faction. He has no subordinate relationship with the Southern Song dynasty. So young master took such a big risk to save the princesses of the Song kingdom. Is it not worth it? Empress Pei Man continued to lower her voice. This is my own business. I don't dare to trouble Empress. Song Qing-shu said lightly. Empress Pei Man sighed faintly. Young master still doesn't trust me. Although young master doesn't know, I can roughly guess. With young master's current status, you definitely won't abandon the waiting Golden Snake Battalion and come all the way to the Jin Kingdom to take such a big risk just because of that girl's beauty. Young master must be thinking of building a relationship with the Southern Song dynasty by rescuing these princesses. Song Qing-shu's expression changed. This time, the rescue of the Song Kingdom princesses who were trapped in the laundry yard was facilitated by various factors and coincidences. But he was not a fool. If there were no benefits, he would not take such a big risk. Empress Pei Man was indeed one of the reasons he valued. Noticing the change in Song Qing-shu's expression, Empress Pei Man immediately knew that she had guessed correctly. A trace of a smile appeared on her face. Even a wise man can make mistakes. Young master, have you realized that you are taking things for granted? What do you mean? Song Qing-shu asked in a low voice. Empress Pei Man looked at the yellow-dressed woman in the distance. Seeing that she was not paying attention to them, she continued. The Song Kingdom's rulers and ministers are famous for bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Moreover, these princesses of the laundry yard are an eternal stain of the Song Kingdom. Every time you see them after rescuing them, you will remember the past of humiliation. The Song Kingdom's emperor may not be grateful to you. Song Qing-shu was shocked. Empress Pei Man's analysis was indeed very reasonable, and with her reminder, he vaguely remembered that in history, there was a princess from the laundry yard who went through many hardships to return to the kingdom of Song. In the end, not only did she not receive the comfort and embrace of her motherland, she was instead framed by the royal family as a fake princess and secretly executed. It was even more wrong than Do-yi. Because of this episode in history left such a deep impression on Song Qing-shu. Do you have any good suggestions? Song Qing-shu's expression was somewhat unsightly. When he thought of how he had worked so hard for half a day, only to end up shooting himself in the foot, he could not help but want to curse. The key lies with those two girls. Empress Pei Man's gaze turned to Zhao Hu'er and Zhao Yuanyuan, who were lying on the bed. Now that the Song Kingdom's Jinshan Academy is very powerful, Confucianism is very popular, and women's chastity is very important. After returning to the Song Kingdom, the other princesses may not have a good ending, but these two girls are definitely an exception. When they were captured, they were only infants in swaddling clothes. Moreover, they have maintained their chastity all these years. When the time comes, they will definitely regain their status of nobility. If you want to obtain reward from the Song Kingdom, you can only rely on them. Seeing that Song Qing-shu was silent, Empress Pei Man continued, Young master, you must have long understood that people's hearts change. Perhaps these women are grateful from the bottom of their hearts right now, but once they reach a safe place and regain their status of nobility, after a few years, this kind of gratitude will gradually fade and eventually disappear completely. If you want them to never change their hearts, now is the best opportunity. Is that what you just did? Song Qing-shu also wore a speechless expression. Of course, the women of the Song Kingdom have one advantage. and that is that they value their chastity very much. As long as you have an intimate relationship now, they will most likely never look at another man for the rest of their lives. In fact, according to my opinion, it would be best to directly obtain their bodies. However, young master is a gentleman. Previously, you clearly had the opportunity, but you were unwilling to take advantage of them. Fortunately, there is still an opportunity now. If young master takes advantage of the situation, this relationship will be intimate enough. Empress Payman moved closer to his ear and whispered softly, "Why are you so kind as to remind me?" Song Qingshu looked at her calmly. Empress Payman smiled charmingly. Young master is a very capable person. If I can do young master a favor, young master will definitely repay me in the future. Hey, you two have been whispering for so long. Are you done? For some reason, when the yellow-robed woman saw Song Qingshu and Empress Payman together intimately, she felt somewhat uncomfortable. Chapter 829. Song Qingshu felt disgusted listening from the side. These words sounded strange, no matter how he heard them, as if they were tricking ignorant girls. However, with Empress Payman acting as the bad guy, he was happy to silently reap the benefits. Want? Big? Brother-in-laws. The two girls' voices were barely audible, but everyone was so close that they could hear them. He's not your brother-in-law. The yellow-shirt girl rubbed her forehead, looking like she was about to faint. She did not know how to describe her two sisters. Were they naive or stupid? No, they're still children. Although her two sisters were a bit silly, as the older sister, she had to protect them. How could she watch this happen? Song Qingshu was silent, but Empress Payman sneered. You want to save the sisters in the laundry yard, but you're not willing to make sacrifices. How can there be the best of both worlds? If it wasn't for the coincidence, you'd have to make far more sacrifices. Now that you've benefited, you're still acting innocent? The yellow-shirt girl was speechless. She knew she was right, but the whole thing felt strange. Just use Wei Wong's. All right, let Song do it. What's the matter? Song Qingshu shrugged. Don't drag me into this. I'm the victim from start to finish. Even if you beg me, I might not be willing. Empress Payman pointed at Zhao Huan, and Yuan. This is the request of your two sisters. Why don't you ask for their opinion? The yellow-shirt girl turned to look at her two sisters and said angrily, You're both girls. How can you make this kind of request? She subconsciously wanted to make a shameless request, but she realized that her tone was too heavy, so she swallowed it at the last moment. Sister, we just don't want our bodies to be stained with Wei Wong's filth. Just thinking about it makes us feel disgusted. We might have nightmares for the rest of our lives, Zhao Yuan argued. You don't feel disgusted by that Song thing? The yellow-shirt girl could not understand her two sisters' insistence. Brother-in-law is different. Zhao Huan pouted and mumbled. How is he different? The yellow-shirt girl said angrily. Why are you so slow as an elder sister? Empress Payman couldn't help but say, Can't you tell that your two sisters are secretly in love with Prince Song? Of course they wouldn't dislike the things that belong to the person they love. Of course not. The two girls were extremely shy, and they snorted in unison. How is this possible? They've only met once. How is it possible for them to have feelings for each other in such a short period of time? The yellow-robed woman stared blankly and said subconsciously, Love is something that comes suddenly like this, not to mention. Empress Payman deliberately looked at Song Qingshu and said with a charming smile, Young Master Song is handsome, confident, and powerful. He is also a famous hero in the world. Not to mention your two inexperienced sisters. Even I like him very much. Shameless, shameless. The yellow-clothed woman couldn't help but spit. This is the difference between us grassland women and Yuhan women. For us, if we like him, we like him. If we don't like him, we don't like him. How can there be so many twists and turns? Empress Payman's eyes fell on the two girls on the bed. Although they are Han people, they grew up in our Gene Kingdom. In this aspect, they're similar to us grassland women. Seeing that the yellow-clothed woman was still hesitating, Empress Payman added one last fuel to the fire. In fact, to put it bluntly, Prince Song has seen and touched the two princesses. Do you think they will marry someone else in the future? Hey, I'll say it again. At that time, I just wanted to hide it from you. How could I know that fate is so magical? Now we are on the same side. Seeing that she was leading the fire of war to him, Song Qingshu suddenly became a little unhappy. What? Are you not willing to take responsibility for your bad deeds? The yellow-clothed woman suddenly frowned, completely forgetting what she was trying to stop a second ago. What did I do wrong? Song Qingshu's face was gloomy. In my hometown, this kind of hugging is also very normal. In the end, even his own voice became lower. In his previous life, perhaps hugging was indeed normal, but touching naked girls like this was also very abnormal, even if it was to fake the traces. Prince Song's hometown is Xiangyang Prefecture's Wudong Mountain. How come I didn't know that this kind of behavior is normal in the Song Kingdom? The yellow-clothed woman said coldly. Take responsibility, then take responsibility. It's just two princesses. I can also afford to raise them. Song Qingshu's head was about to explode. He simply stood up and said this. At the same time, he was in a trance. A long time ago, he was also a good young man who yearned for pure love. However, in this chaotic world, he gradually learned many things that he used to despise, such as marriage for benefits, in your dreams. Hu and Yuan are so beautiful, and they're the dignified princesses of the Song Kingdom. Are they something that you can have as you please? For some reason, the yellow-clothed woman felt uncomfortable. What princesses of the Song Kingdom? They are now just two female slaves. If it weren't for Prince Song being a gentleman, your two sisters would have been as long ago. Empress Pei Man laughed coldly. This lady is trying to obstruct us by every means possible. Is it because you are jealous? The yellow-clothed woman's heart skipped a beat. Why would I be jealous? For example, someone secretly admires Prince Song, but who would know that his sister would beat him to it? He is too embarrassed to openly compete with his sister, so he can only secretly sabotage his sister and Prince Song's relationship. Although Empress Pei Man was laughing, her words were piercing, causing the yellow-clothed woman's expression to change greatly. Have you really thought it through? The yellow-clothed woman bit her lip and looked at her two sisters. Zhao Huer and Zhao Yuanyuan looked at each other. Their faces were red, but no one was willing to speak. The yellow-clothed woman looked at them and understood most of it. I can't be bothered with you. Do what you want. As soon as she finished speaking, she left with a frosty expression. Sister. The two girls reached out to pull her back, but the yellow-clothed woman left in a hurry. They did not manage to hold her back, causing the blanket on their bodies to slip again. They were so frightened that they hurriedly shrank back into the blanket. Why is she so angry? Seeing the yellow-clothed woman's fluttering clothes quickly disappear outside the window, Song Qingshu was dumbfounded. Although young master is resourceful, he does not understand this woman's thoughts. Empress Pei Man smiled and did not intend to explain in detail. She continued, there is not much time. Hurry up and set it up. I will set it up for Wei Wang. You two help Prince Song do it. You want us to do this? Zhao Huer was dumbfounded. Didn't brother-in-law just casually hit Wei Wang? Wouldn't it be fine if he did it again? Song Qingshu was speechless. That move was too dangerous. It hurt his kidney. I'm not so stupid as to do it myself. Then what should we do? Zhao Yuanyuan asked blankly. Song Qingshu did not know whether he should explain or not. What the hell was going on? He had never been so aggrieved when he was picking up girls. Sigh. He wanted to be a whore, but also had to set up a chastity. It was so troublesome. Empress Pei Man seemed to have guessed his thoughts. She moved closer to the two girls' ears like a flower. Later, you two will do this, huh? The two girls' cheeks turned bright red. There seemed to be a hint of retreat in their eyes. As long as you think about it, this is a necessary sacrifice to save your suffering sisters. You should feel better. Empress Pei Man added, what's more, you're doing it for the man you like. What's there to be embarrassed about? Noticing that the two girls' eyes gradually became firm and their faces were once again shrouded in a layer of holy light, as if they were ready to sacrifice themselves, Song Qingshu could not help but secretly click his tongue. This Empress Payman's ability to fool people was off the charts. After fooling the two girls, Empress Payman began to set up the scene in the hall. First, she picked up the wine pot and poured a large amount of wine into Wei Wang's mouth. The wine spilled from the corner of his mouth onto his lapel. The heavy smell of wine could be smelled from afar. It was getting late. If there were any more delays, it would be daybreak. Then everything would be in vain. Now that things had come to this, Song Qing-shu was no longer pedantic. He directly walked towards the phoenix couch. When Song Qing-shu came down from the phoenix couch, he happened to meet Empress Payman's half-smiling eyes. Prince Song's body is really good. She had already set up the other places and had been waiting here until he finally came out. Through the curtain, Empress Payman could vaguely see that there was something on the two girls' lips. She could not help but laugh and point at them, indicating for them to quickly wipe it off. Song Qing-shu's old face turned red. Have the other things been set up? Almost done. Only the body of that secret guard is left. Empress Payman pointed to the corner. Originally, I had planned to disguise myself as him to escape punishment. But knowing that your disguise skills are so powerful, you can cut off his face and disguise yourself as him. When the emperor asks, I will have more confidence. Song Qing-shu nodded. He had no intention of correcting the other party for thinking that he was using a real human skin to disguise himself. In about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, give this to Wei Wang. Empress Payman handed over a vermilion pill. What is this? Smelling the medicinal fragrance, Song Qing-shu faintly felt dazed and couldn't help but be shocked. This pill is called unrestrained restraint. This pill is called unrestrained emotions, and it wasn't easy for me to get my hands on it. It's made from dozens of rare herbs in the western region, and it will make people lose their minds. At the same time, it will completely release the words that they normally bury in their hearts, making it seem like they're drunk to outsiders. So, whether or not things will develop as expected will depend on this pill. Empress Payman looked at the red pill, and her eyes revealed a trace of fanatical gambling. So powerful. Song Qing-shu secretly clicked his tongue. He thought that he was in too much of a hurry today. In the future, when he had the chance, he would figure out the formula of this pill. It really was a necessary medicine for framing others. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.